Imagine getting spawn camped and reborn 20 years in the future. This kid was once the absolute GOAT, a legendary ninth circle mage. He went out like a hero, sacrificing himself to save the server, but now, he wakes up in the body of an illegitimate outcast, stuck at level 1. The world has changed, but his brain is still a library of god-tier destruction. Oscar checks his new stats. He realizes there is a massive glitch in the system. This body is overflowing with an absurd amount of mana. With this kind of fuel, he can easily dominate the stuck-up mages of the White Tower. In this world, power is the only law. Flashback to the carnage. Bodies are piled up everywhere. One guy is rocking a massive sword straight through his chest. He's gasping desperate for a sign of life from his squad. Just a groan, a twitch, anything to show he isn't alone. He's basically begging the universe, but silence answers. He realizes he is the sole survivor of this massacre. Then reflected in his dying eyes, he spots the severed head of the monster, responsible for this nightmare. The enemy who united the demon factions for the first time, triggering a war that nearly deleted humanity from existence. Even the kids were on the chopping block, but the mage starts ripping an incantation in a forgotten ancient tongue. Clutch move. Just before a child gets devoured, he teleports her away, dropping her safely into a woman's arms. That long-haired legend with the pierced chest. That's the White Tower's leader. He bet it all on this one play to secure the dub and liberate humanity. Without his sacrifice, that demon head wouldn't be rolling on the ground. Suddenly, a mysterious woman pulls up. To confirm the kill, meet Edna, the final dragon, the entity that binge-watches history, like it is a TV show. She approaches the dying master with a classic dilemma, good news or bad news. The master chooses the bad news first. While he was busy being a hero, demons raided the White Tower. The place is wrecked and most mages were wiped out. Centuries of research, ashes. He is crushed, but then Edna drops the good news. The Imperial cavalry arrived early. They managed to save the survivors and his students. Even with a hole in his chest, he sighs in relief. Edna asks if he has any regrets. The master shakes his head. He handpicked every warrior who died today. He can't regret the team he built. With his HP hitting 0, Edna asks if he has any final requests before the screen fades to black. Just watch over my students, he whispers. They are still rookies. Edna promises to check in on them occasionally. The master laughs at her formal tone, but the dragon insists. He has earned that level of respect. She swears that she and the entire continent will never forget the heroes of the White Tower. The master nods, but deep down he feels like a failure. If he gets a rerun, he is done being the selfless leader. Next time he is going to live selfishly, just for his own crew. That is the dream he clings to as he fades away. Game over. Edna logs the official time of death for Great Sage Oscar, adding his name to the list of fallen legends. Snap back to reality. Inside the White Tower, a boy is twitching in a hospital bed, looking like he is about to reboot. A single leaf lands on his hand and boom, he jolts awake like he has been electrocuted. He flails so hard he accidentally smacks the poor person trying to take care of him. The startled attendant explains they were just swapping out the towels, totally confused by his reaction. They scold him for his weird sleeping habits and zero gratitude. Talk about waking up on the wrong side of the bed. The boy is reeling. Was he actually asleep? He checks his chest, confused by his defenseless state. He shouldn't be breathing. He vividly remembers the demon priest turning his heart into a shish kebab. Oscar demands answers, but suddenly crash. The door gets kicked open by some arrogant guy who seems very interested. That he is finally awake. The nurse tries to intervene, but this intruder looks ready to teach our MC some manners. Ignoring the threat, Oscar looks at his hands and asks how he is still alive. This confuses everyone. The blonde intruder pauses. Oscar scans the guy's outfit. White Tower mage robes. Confirmed. Still thinking he is the boss, Oscar orders a sitrep. The blonde dude does not appreciate the attitude one bit. He refuses to answer a crazy kid who should be on his knees begging for forgiveness, not barking orders. Oscar senses killing intent. Thinking it is a demon assassin, he casts a wind shield instantly. It's a spell that should snap bones like twigs. But to his shock, the shield flickers and dies out. That is when it hits him. His magic is pathetic now. But the blonde guy's expression shifts from anger to surprise. He is actually impressed by the spell's complex structure, realizing Oscar hasn't been slacking off. Punishment postponed. He tells Oscar to focus on recovery while Frank watches the drama unfold from the front row. Frank is looking at him like he's absolutely lost his marbles. The guy's energy is way too explosive for a quiet sick room. But our main character isn't worried about the attitude. He's freaking out about his own body. He demands to know the date. Frank hits him with September 21st. Our boy panics, thinking he's been in a coma for 5 whole months. Wrong. Frank says it's only been 1 day. Oscar immediately demands to see Lloyd or Gilly. He needs answers from his crew right now. Frank snaps back. Tell him to forget those traitors and stop throwing the Tower Master's name around casually. Wait, did he say traitors? Here's the tea. Lloyd betrayed everyone to join the Red Tower and Gilly. She raided the vault for high-level scrolls before dipping. The accusation makes our protagonist's blood boil, but he pauses. He reads Frank's aura. The guy isn't sweating. He's telling the truth. Sasha is the tower master now. But in our MC's memory, Sasha is a 5-year-old kid. Turns out that kid is now 25. Frank thinks Oscar is hallucinating hard. Ignored our boy drags himself out of bed to face the mirror. He freezes. The reflection staring back is a total stranger. He paws at his face, mind completely reeling. The horror sets in. 20 years. It's been 20 years since he died. Outside, the city has transformed into a futuristic metropolis. We're talking artificial lights flooding the streets and mana-powered vehicles zooming by. Magical engineering took over the world. His old crew would have geeked out over this. Back in his day, hope was dead, but now he needs to lock in on the present. Time to download the specs on this new vessel. A bankrupt noble kid taken in by the tower at 10 years old. A level 1 mage with 0 talent. At his age, he should be dominating, but he's trash. The pressure must have broken him. So the kid bought a black market elixir and chugged it. Boom, collapse. It adds up. If that stuff actually worked, his mana core would be exploding with power. Oscar scans the body internally and realizes this kid should be dead meat. But then he spots something wild. The mana reserves are massive, way beyond a level 1 scrub. It's raw. Totally unrefined energy. Maybe a side effect of the juice. But amidst that glowing mana pool, a weird speck manifests. Our protagonist zooms in on it mentally. Then, in the real world, black, gooey sludge starts dripping from his fingertips. Oscar stares at it, genuinely spooked. Drip. Hiss. It's poison. Lethal stuff. But why is it inside him? He connects the dots, and the realization hits like a truck. He gets the full picture now. The elixir wasn't for power. It was a setup. The perfect cover story to hide a poisoning. The poison is the real killer. If our MC wasn't a legendary mage, he never would have detected the residue. He doesn't know who put the hit out, but he's already locked in. He got a second life, and he's going to live it up. No more self-sacrifice. It's time for his villain era. A selfish life sounds pretty good right now. But first, Oscar swears vengeance for the body's original owner. Meanwhile, on the gritty outskirts of Syrian City, a runner brings urgent intel to a VIP. A man lounging in a luxury chair demands to be called boss. He wants the update. Bad news, their shop got wrecked from the inside out. A mage did it. The boss is fuming. Witnesses say the attacker was hunting for the guy who sold the illegal elixir. The boss does the math, it has to be Oscar. But that kid should be knocking on death's door, not throwing hands. The henchman starts sweating about a White Tower investigation, but the boss chills him out. Their client is untouchable. The client wears a White Tower ring. Suddenly, both thugs jump. A voice cuts through the air. You guys are way too loud. It's our protagonist looking fresh. He tracked the mana signature right out of the poison bottle. He didn't expect a whole welcome party. The gang leader, clearly annoyed, asks how a dying kid trashed his store. Our boy just smirks. I'm fascinated by your little chat. Please keep spilling the secrets. The boss isn't in the mood for sass. He signals his crew to delete the kid. A goon lunges sword swinging for the kill. If they want to get violent, Oscar is happy to oblige. One flick of the wrist. A simple wind blast deflects the sword and casually slices the guy's throat. The head goes flying, turning into room decor. Oops, Oscar put a little too much sauce on that. The boss looks horrified. Going full panic mode, the boss whips out a firearm and unloads a clip straight at the boy. Bang bang. Oscar's never seen a gun, but his windshield catches the bullets midair, like distinct flies. No mana in them. He's genuinely curious about the mechanics. The mob boss's jaw hits the floor as the bullets hover there. Mechanics can wait. Oscar reverses the trajectory and turns the thug into Swiss cheese. The boss hits the ground, bleeding out. Interrogation time. Oscar seals the room with a sound-blocking barrier. Now try to be a little more cooperative, yeah. Oscar demands a name. Who put the hit out? The thug tries to play the quiet game, so Oscar introduces his face to the sole of a boot. If this guy values his pride over breathing, fine. Oscar decides to crack him open with a nasty little spell. The magic hits like a truck. This poor victim of society goes into immediate shock as wind magic starts tearing him apart from the inside out. Imagine thousands of invisible needles shredding your guts. Oscar hates resorting to this torture stuff, honestly, mostly because the screaming is annoying. He just wants the truth. Snot and tears running down his face, the thug finally breaks and swears he'll talk. Oscar chills on the sofa like he owns the place, telling the guy to spill everything about the client. Turns out they got the elixir and a stack of cash to off him. Talk about selling out cheap. Oscar ignores the money. He wants a description. The guy was cloaked up face hidden in the shadows. But he was flashing a very specific accessory, the ring of the White Tower. Oscar clocks it immediately. The ring is a plant, a decoy to frame the tower. But the thug remembers one distinct detail. The scent. The client smelled crisp, refreshing, like mint. And regarding the aftermath of the hit, the thug figured the magic tower is too swamped to care. Since they fell out of the Big Four, nobody would bother launching an investigation. That last part actually rattles our MC. But this low-level criminal doesn't know the half of it compared to an actual White Tower mage. Oscar plays the memory loss card, blaming the elixir. The bandit eagerly offers up some documents to fill in the blanks. The battered thug drags his sorry self to the desk and hands over the intel. Oscar dives right into the paperwork. It looks bad. Even after taking down the evil high priest, the White Tower's performance stats from last year are a total dumpster fire. They've been spiraling for 20 years, and now the Imperial family is gearing up for a major announcement. This doesn't add up. Oscar specifically left blueprints with Edna to prevent exactly this kind of collapse. He checks the current business models of the 4 towers. The Yellow Tower, they've cornered the market on lightning magic. In this era of magi tech, they're dominating because they run the city's entire street lighting grid. The Blue Tower is all about hydration, controlling clean water, boosting farming, and mass-producing potions. The Red Tower went full military-industrial complex, focusing on monster hunting. So, what is the White Tower doing to compete? Oscar stares at the page in disbelief. Delivery service. Seriously, just because they can fly, they turned elite mages into couriers. Fast, secure shipping. Oscar had no clue about these Wind Knights. These guys are supposed to be rulers of the sky, soaring with the majesty of dragons and eagles reduced to paper boys. Oscar demands to know whose brilliant idea this was. The thug points to the current Tower Master. Oscar facepalms hard. Sasha was his disciple. This is embarrassing. Potions are the real cash cow in this world. He needs to figure out how the Blue Tower snatched that monopoly. Turns out, they own the market now. A market that 20 years ago belonged exclusively to the White Tower. The thug explains their racket, selling clean water at luxury prices and charging heavily to summon rain for drought zones. Oscar is baffled. Why pay for water? He assumes it's some bougie trend for the aristocracy. It used to be free everywhere. Anyway, the White Tower is on the brink, and the upcoming White Knight Festival is their final shot at redemption. They have exactly 7 months. Meanwhile, the bandit is bleeding out from bullet wounds and groaning in agony. He's fading fast. Oscar pauses, debating whether to heal the guy as a thank you for the intel. Then he glances at the guy's rap sheet. Arson, extortion, murder. A real charmer. The guy is human garbage. Oscar decides to let karma handle it and slips out the window, leaving the thug to rot. Back on the streets, he muses about morality. Should he try being a good guy this time around? He heads back to the White Tower. The fatigue hits him like a wall. He can't believe a few basic spells drained him this badly. In this weak vessel, channeling the legendary magic that made him a historical icon might be impossible. He tries to summon the Wind Archive, but the spell flickers and dies in his hands. He needs to fix this broken body as soon as possible. First step, a full magical analysis. He dives into the body's memories, which are a chaotic mess. To salvage this vessel, he needs the backstory. Turns out he's the heir to the Count Cruzian bloodline, the sole survivor of a massive fire. As a kid, he was labeled a prodigy, carrying the weight of massive expectations. Top of his class, perfect grades, and a thesis presentation that solidified his status as a budding genius. So why is he stuck at level 1? Then he sees the medical diagnosis, mana deficiency syndrome. That throws him for a loop. But it explains everything why a genius mind is trapped in a level 1 body. He has the ultimate software, but the hardware is completely fried. He understands everything but can cast nothing. The magical diagnostic finally pings complete. Oscar scans the data. Physically, the kid is absolutely flawless. This isn't some random sickness. This was a hit job. Just like the name implies, the victim is totally locked out of storing mana. A standard mage rocks up to 20 mana circuits to dictate their rank. Without them, you're hard stuck at level 3 forever. But our MC's situation is way darker. Someone deliberately tied his circuits in knots. If the original owner was truly a genius, he had to know that he wasn't sick at all. Man, a diary would be clutch right now. According to Frank, the body's previous owner was a total lush, but that drunken persona, likely a calculated mask, he knew someone, was gunning for him, so he played the part of the reckless party animal. If that theory holds up, it explains why he finally chugged that sketchy elixir. Even with 0 allies, he took a gamble to shatter those invisible chains. Now our MC just needs to untangle the mess, which is totally in his wheelhouse. While digging through some dusty tomes, one title grabs Oscar's eye. The reinterpretation of basic magic. He starts rifling through the pages and spots. The margins are packed with scribbles, detailed notes on wind arts, and the theory behind them. It mirrors our protagonist's own style perfectly. It proves wind magic isn't just about throwing up shields. The original Oscar trusted his gut just like our guy. He even engineered several foundational spells. He couldn't cast them, sure, but he ran every experiment as a simulation in his mind. The kid really was a prodigy. And it gets deeper. He never stopped grinding, working harder than the pros. This book is way too advanced for a rookie. He knew the walls were closing in, yet he forged his own path in total isolation. The old Oscar walked a lonely road. Even while shouldering that heavy legacy, our MC is hooked. It's time to finish what the kid started and snap that seal. And since our guy is a Tier 1 expert, he's going further. The people who clipped Oscar's wings are gonna pay, with interest. Cut to the next day, wind sweeps through the plaza. Our MC is dazed, not sure why he's wandering out here. Last thing he remembers is passing out while hacking the mana block, stunting his growth. Suddenly, a voice echoes, "Master." Oscar freezes. He's staring at a ghost from his past life. It's the dream curse. Sleep triggers a forced rewind to his old memories. He never thought this hex would hitch a ride into his new body. It must be grafted to his very soul. Weirdly, this flashback isn't a nightmare. It's peaceful. He's back in lecture mode, breaking down magic categories: enchantment, acceleration, balance, or special variants. Lloyd argues that the White Tower chases harmony, making wind magic the top-tier choice. Sasha pipes up, asking if the towers play favorites. Teacher nods. Every faction has its own distinct vibe. The Golden Tower is all about speed, while the Red Tower craves enchantment and firepower. Blue and White Towers, they prioritize equilibrium. Gilead jumps in. He wants acceleration magic. Slow stuff isn't his style. Teacher shuts him down gently. You don't pick your affinity. You're born with it. Time for a live demo. Sasha steps up to the plate. It's her first cast, so the tension is high. Then a spark manifests at her fingertip. It's not volatile or rapid. It's perfectly stable. She's a harmonic type mirroring the MC. The kid is absolutely beaming at the news. The blonde kid goes next. Boom, acceleration type. Then it's Lloyd's turn to face the music. A flower blooms on his finger. That's the mark of a special type. But Lloyd looks crushed. He begs to switch classes, but the teacher shakes his head that rarity is a gift. Lloyd just wanted to be like his mentor. The teacher is touched. He decides right there to give Lloyd extra tutoring and research a workaround. The promise of private lessons flips Lloyd's mood instantly. Our MC warns him. Special types walk a thorny path, and they need a guide. But the boy is just hyped to spend time with him. They seal it with a vow. That kid earned the nickname Man of His Word. Despite his mature act, he was just an innocent child back then. Bzut. The flashback shatters. A PA system blares. Someone is paging our protagonist. He has no clue how long he was out, but he's summoned to Laboratory 4202. He shakes off the grogginess, heads to the lab and checks his stats. He managed to force open 12 circuits and secure 2 mana lines. Level 2 achieved. He knocks and finds the blonde professor waiting. The guy asks for a status report. Since our MC is playing the amnesia card, he just says he's chill, which relaxes the prof. Oscar finally places the face. It's Maxim. Formerly his junior, now a veteran, sage running the show. The guy was always a straight shooter. Our boy just hopes Maxim's future stays bright. Back in the day, this guy was practically our boy's shadow, always dropping the master title with total reverence. Seeing him crushing it in life now, that honestly hits the spot. Oscar cracks a subtle grin, but Maxim catches the vibe shift instantly, asking what's up with the sudden smile. Then he drops the bomb. He caught wind of some bandits getting wiped out. He presses our boy fishing for a confession. Oscar plays it cool, claiming he doesn't know a thing. But he admits the universe must have had a reason for that beatdown. Since those thugs actually tried to delete his life, he downed a toxic elixir and slammed the receipts on the table to prove his point. Suddenly, Maxim gets why our protagonist looks like he's running on 1% battery. Oscar explains he tried the diplomatic route, but all he got was another assassination attempt for his trouble. One look at the cash involved, and the math starts mathing for Maxim. That notebook was basically a receipt for a hit job. Maxim decides to file the whole mess under self-defense case closed. Oscar is relieved, but he seizes the moment to call in a solid favor. He demands a sit-down with the master of the Magic Tower. Should be a breeze considering Maxim is practically on speed dial with her. But Maxim drops a reality check our protagonist didn't see coming. He can't get anywhere near her for the next 6 months. This is a total nightmare for Oscar. She's booked solid until after the White Night Festival, currently away on a heavy business trip, handling top-tier priorities. Oscar presses for details on why she's ghosting everyone, and the truth comes out. One of the high mages went MIA, leaving the guild in a super embarrassing spot. He apologizes for prying, but pivots to ask for her stats. Maxim reveals she's hit level 7 at her age, which is supposed to be impressive. Oscar holds back a laugh. He was sitting at level 9 back in his prime. Knowing his student's raw talent, he figures she should be crushing level 8 by now. Maxim notes the slice on the body was surgically clean and asks if the kid has been grinding attack magic. Our boy shrugs it off, claiming he trains every now and then. Buying the excuse, Maxim dismisses the class, but outside the office, a new player enters the chat. The Vice Master is already waiting in the wings, here to run interference and beg Maxime to cut the kid some slack. And yes, the old man's name is Gandalf. Seriously, I changed the name. Maxim insists on discipline, but Gandalf, the guy who actually scouted this genius, pushes back, clearly stressed about the boy's well-being. Even basic magic is a nightmare to perfect at that tier. Maxim realizes the kid is a total wild card. He's a box of surprises, probably grinding way harder behind the scenes than anyone guessed. Gandalf cuts the chat short. They need to face the other elders who are already waiting. Oscar heads up to the 10th floor, the location from his visions. It's a total ghost town until a gardener spots him. The guy clocks Oscar immediately. This is Wilter, the veteran, managing the facility. And he confirms the gossip about Oscar's memory loss is true. They used to be tight back in the day. Our boy is shook that the news traveled so fast. He asks why he's getting the royal treatment, and the old man drops the mic. He knew the former master, the great Lord Oscar. Another plot twist our protagonist wasn't ready for. That's why they call him Young Master. Desperate for info, our protagonist begs the old-timer to stick around and keep talking. But Wilter drops some sad news. He's retiring soon. He's clocked in 40 years at this place, surviving 3 different masters, and watching countless colleagues come and go. The only reason he stuck it out this long was out of loyalty to the great Lord Oscar. He quotes a speech from a past ceremony about everyone in the tower being essential. Our boy gets hit right in the feels by this recognition, because he was the one who said that. Still, the old man is dead set on leaving, which leaves our protagonist stunned. Here's the tea. The White Tower is broke. Revenue is in the toilet compared to the glory days. Our protagonist asks if Wilter is bouncing because of the service bonus. We're talking about a payout that triggers. After 20 and 40 years of loyalty, specifically, a prize of $200,000 for the 4-decade mark. The current White Tower can't cut that check. To save them the shame, the old man is bowing out before the deadline hits. This place is his second home, and he loves it too much to bankrupt it. Our protagonist had no clue. The tower was down so bad. He thought the other towers were just greedy, but this is straight-up poverty. He realizes he can't judge people's hustle when they're desperate. All our boy has are fancy titles, and titles don't pay the bills. Thinking about this, he zones out so hard the old man has to snap him out of it. Wilter is panicked, looking at Oscar's hand. He clenched his fist so aggressively, he actually drew blood. Oscar ignores the pain and asks when the retirement party is. Wilter says he's gone in 2 weeks, quickly patching up the cut and telling the boy to hit the infirmary. Oscar isn't having it. He tells the old man to cancel his resignation plans because there's a fix for this mess. He vows to make it happen because he knows a foolproof method to stack paper fast, ensuring a tragedy like this never goes down again. With his memory unlocked, our boy starts plotting exactly how to turn that money-making scheme into reality. Stuck in the library grind, drowning in theory, but the paycheck painfully slow. He is still just a measly level 2 mage. He needs a side hustle with serious ROI. And in this world, the real cash cow is the potion market. That is when a random scrap of paper caught his eye. One headline, one clue that could flip his entire life script. Cut to the Vice Master's office. The vibe is toxic. Fidalina, the keeper of coin, is vibrating with rage. She is done playing nice. The Vice Master tries to defuse it, saying the thief is already repenting. Fidalina fires back. Thieves do not repent, they escalate. But the Vice Master drops the sad truth. Relax. There is literally nothing left in this tower to steal. Doesn't matter. She wants the kid thrown in solitary confinement. Gandalf watches from the corner, eyebrows raised. These two have been bickering for a century. Gandalf sides with Maxim. Solitary is way too brutal for a first offense. It misses the point of rehabilitation. His counteroffer, make the culprit pay back 3 times the damage cost. Fidalina snaps back. We have 0 budget. They need a fix like yesterday. Half the tower is collecting dust. Her plan, gut the potion lab, sell the scraps, and buy them another 3 months of survival. Gandalf slams the brakes. Absolutely not. This is a house of knowledge, not a scrapyard. They need those tools. You do not pawn the future to survive the weak. But Fidalina hits him with reality. What future? Look around you. We have been waiting 20 years for a miracle. She is about to go off, but Maxim cuts in. Even still, she mutters the hard truth. Even if a prodigy existed, why would they waste their talent at the White Tower? Right on cue, a knock echoes from the door. It is our boy Oscar. He walked right into the lion's den because he has a pitch. He looks Gandalf in the eye. Let me start a business. Fidalina sees red. This is the kid who burns through research grants like paper. She tries to shut him down, but he slaps the article on the desk. A province is on total lockdown. Epidemic protocol. Gandalf reads the fine print. It looks bad. Specifically, the Cadena flu. That is a nightmare scenario because there is 0 cure. The tower used to have a vaccine, but that recipe vanished 20 years ago. Oscar points at the paper. That is his entry point. He is going to reverse engineer the vaccine, reclaim the monopoly, bring the gold back to the tower. Fidalina scoffs. Delusional. They have thrown mountains of gold at that project and got nothing but failure. She is not betting the treasury on a 20-year-old rookie. Oscar nods. Yeah, I am 20, but I am not like the others. He smirks. I am a genius. Boom. The main character energy just flooded the room. Fidalina looks ready to strangle him. She launches a verbal assault, calling him arrogant, reckless, a brat. Oscar stands there and takes the heat without flinching. Gandalf steps in before bloodshed occurs. Enough. The kid has a solid proposal. You handle the money, Fidelina, but you are being toxic. The reality check lands. Fidelina realizes she crossed the line. Oscar gets it though. He knows why she hates him. As treasurer, she watches the books, and for 2 years, he has been a walking financial disaster. But he pushes forward. Just look at the second page. Archbishop Baldwin changed his itinerary. Oscar taps the map. Does that not look suspicious to you? There are only 7 archbishops in the Order of Eltera. On paper, they are holy saints. In reality, not so much. During pilgrimages, they camp out in major cities for a month to soak up donations, but they only target rich nobles. Siren used to be a gold mine, but now it is a dump. Maxim nods. Maybe it is spiritual. Oscar shakes his head. If it is spiritual, it makes even less sense. The land is cursed. The route is set. After Siren, they head to Vince City. But here is the kicker. Usually they milk a city for a month. But in Siren, he is rushing through. The archbishop is sprinting to Vince. Why? Because in their dogma, accidents or sickness are divine punishment. Getting sick ruins their shot at becoming a cardinal. If Vince has the plague, the bishop is stalling in Siren to minimize his exposure in the danger zone. That is Oscar's read. Fidelina blinks. She is actually impressed. Clever theory, she admits. But we cannot fund a startup based on a hunch. Gandalf nods. The tower's accounts are frozen for the other mages. They cannot spare a dime. However, Gandalf reaches into his robe. I will back him with my own stash. Fidelina thinks it is reckless, but the old man is determined. He drops 30,000 coins on the table. It is a start, but for mass-producing potions, it is nowhere near enough. The heat is rising and our MC is cornered. Time to trigger Plan B. He's about to whip up a single, flawless sample and gun for that sweet sponsorship from the Archbishop. With the pandemic wrecking the economy, leveraging a desperate man's wallet is just smart business. Oscar is locked in and ready to execute. Boom. First vial down. Not bad for a warm-up. It's just a basic stamina booster, a little test run, to prove he hasn't lost his touch. Meanwhile, Frank is hauling crates in the background, whining about his spine giving out, but he delivered every ingredient Oscar demanded. Looking like he was about to pass out from the grind, Frank begged for a drink. Oscar tossed him the recovery potion he just brewed. One sip, and the kid lit up. Frank couldn't believe the quality, hyping up the concoction. To be fair, he did snag the freshest herbs on the market for this. Oscar noticed the talent immediately. You've got a merchant's eye, kid, Frank scoffed. Yeah, that's the plan. Once the White Tower finally crashes and burns. Whack, our MC didn't let that slide, delivering a swift smack to the head. Disrespect won't be tolerated. Getting back to business, Frank rubbed his head and asked, so what's the play? Fidelina chimed in. She's on Team Oscar now. Oscar realizes she's actually committed to saving this crumbling tower. Prep time. Oscar starts organizing the loot, waving off help. The tower is full of rebellious brats, but with the right leader, they could be gold mines. And Frank, he's the biggest troublemaker of the bunch. Oscar is intrigued. Time to see what makes this kid tick. He noticed something interesting when checking the inventory. It's all poison. Black lilies, camellias, devil's mushrooms. Oscar smirked. These are potent meds if used right. You know how to prep them, Frank nodded confidently. Boil them for 12 hours straight. Technically correct, Oscar countered, but you're killing the potency. You want results, you steam them. Do it my way, and you save 98% of the nutrients. That's the old school White Tower secret sauce. Frank is totally geeked out now listening as Oscar explains the workflow. Detox time. Oscar flexes some wind magic, stripping the toxins right out of the plants. A deadly poison mist swirls in his palm, but he needs to isolate it completely. Watch closely, he commanded. The masterclass is in session. With the toxins purged, it's just a matter of mixing the pure herbs. Just like that, the cure for the 20-year scourge Cadena fever is born. Oscar made it look effortless. Your turn, he told the kid. Frank froze, staring in disbelief. He's sweating bullets because he can't dual cast spells yet. The anxiety is real. Oscar watches like a hawk. The kid's mana control is decent, a bit shaky, but not trash. The problem? He's hit his hard cap. What's the holdup? Oscar pressed. Frank admitted he has no clue how to run 2 spells simultaneously. That's level 4 tier magic and Frank is stuck at level 3. Oscar grinned. I'll school you. Frank knows this is forbidden knowledge, but our boy doesn't care about rules. He breaks it down. Visualize a wall in your brain. Partition it. Left side runs one spell, right side runs the other. Simple geometry. Frank has nothing to lose, so he focuses. Suddenly inside the pink mist, a second mist forms. Success. Oscar cheered on his apprentice, nailed it on the first attempt. If it's this easy, Frank gasped. Why is it a secret? Oscar's expression darkened. Greed. The elites didn't want to give freebies to rookies. It became tradition. But we're at war now. We need soldiers, not secrets. Hoarding knowledge when the world is burning. That's over. Oscar gave the kid his flowers. You did good, Frank. You've got real talent. Honestly, Oscar didn't expect him to ace it so fast, but hey, having a legendary teacher helps. They still have a mountain of herbs left, and Frank is suddenly pumped to grind. With the big equipment running, Oscar says, let's clear the whole batch. Hours later, Frank is totally wiped out. The final count, 514 vials, but the victory lap is cut short. Maxim bursts in panicking. Code Red, the Blue Tower reps are meeting the Archbishop right now. If they sign that contract, we're finished. Everyone starts losing it, but Oscar stays ice cold. Relax. This fever is a Class B disaster. That gives us an angle. Maxim is stunned by his confidence. Luckily, Maxim has super speed. Cut to the Archbishop's waiting room. Baldwin gives the green light. The Blue Tower mages are strutting in, getting comfortable in his office, thinking they've already won. The Archbishop looks up, ready to hear their pitch. Baldwin leans in, demanding a status update on the fever antidote. The research team insists everything is moving along smoothly. They claim they're at the finish line, just needing to run the final diagnostics. One thumbs up, and they secure the permit. It's all about getting that rubber stamp from the Empire's agency for mass production. But red tape takes time, not days. They promise a 6-month turnaround, a deadline that makes the Archbishop's blood boil. He's on a strict schedule. He needs to touch down in the city of Vince within 4 months max. Suddenly, his assistant interrupts with news of fresh visitors. Baldwin waves them, in assuming it's just more reinforcements from the Blue Tower coming to waste his time. But when he scans the room, he realizes these aren't his usual guests. Curiosity spikes. Who exactly just walked in? Enter our main character. He introduces himself as a level 2 mage from the White Tower, and he's not here to chat, he's here to deal. Baldwin is visibly shook, seeing a White Tower mage on his turf. Oscar skips the pleasantries and cuts straight to the chase. He looks the Archbishop in the eye. I'm here to sell you the Caldina fever vaccine. Baldwin smirks. The timing couldn't be more perfect, considering the other guys are here for the exact same gig. Oscar asks if he missed the boat. Baldwin shakes his head. The Blue Tower is still stalling, which is music to our hero's ears. The rival Blue Mage snaps, calling Oscar a total fraud. He claims the White Tower is broke and tech illiterate, but Baldwin ignores the noise. He asks if the cure is real. Oscar doesn't flinch. I don't lie to holy men, as he drops a sample on the desk. The Archbishop is instantly hooked, asking about production numbers. The Blue Mage is fuming, watching his deal slip away. Baldwin silences the room. He tells the screaming mage to shut it. You don't get to yell when you show up empty-handed. Desperate, the rival mage plays his last card bureaucracy. Do you even have the Empire's approval for this? Our boy casually says, nope. The Blue Mage lights up, convinced he just won the argument by technicality. He starts trash-talking, claiming the White Tower lacks the infrastructure to mass-produce anything. Oscar's patience wears thin. The disrespect toward the White Tower's legacy triggers him. Oscar claps back. Our history runs deeper than yours. Even if it's just by 5 years, that's a gap the Blue Tower couldn't bridge in a millennium. He's talking heritage. And he's right. Rewind 20 years and the White Tower held the absolute monopoly on the potion game. The Blue Mage sneers, calling that ancient history nobody cares about. That comment strikes a nerve, genuinely ticking Oscar off. A menacing dark aura begins to leak from Oscar, terrifying the Blue Tower mage to his core. He's about to get schooled. But before Oscar can strike, the secretary bursts in. Urgent call on the line for the Archbishop. It's the Lord of Vince City himself. Baldwin braces for bad news, but the Lord is practically crying with gratitude. Why? Because the cure has already arrived. The White Tower elders didn't wait, they delivered the goods. Oscar's team prepped everything in the shadows, telling the Lord to thank the Archbishop for the miracle. Baldwin is beaming. He asks about side effects, but the report is flawless. The stuff works like magic. Now the Lord is begging for the second batch. Since the White Tower rep said Baldwin calls the shots, the ball is in his court. Baldwin promises to send it as soon as possible. He hangs up, looking at Oscar with new respect. Was this your doing? He asks. The Blue Mage tries to interject, screaming about broken regulations. Baldwin shuts him down cold. Oscar shrugs, claiming he doesn't know law or war. But then his eyes go sharp. We aren't in peace times, Oscar reminds them. The enemy has changed. Demons use disease as their weapon now. Standard production takes months. Approval takes even longer. In a crisis, that's a death sentence. That's why a new law exists, fast-tracking treatment for war casualties under special measures. The Blue Mage argues they aren't at war. Oscar counters, reciting the statute like a lawyer. 3 conditions apply. 1. Species conflict. 2. International war. 3. A Class B disaster or higher. This fever, that's a Class B disaster. Boom. No regulatory agency required. The loophole is airtight. The other Blue Mage tries to pivot, stammering. If those White Tower amateurs can do it, so can we. But Baldwin waves him off. The moment that phone rang, the deal was sealed. The Lord of Vince already thinks Baldwin and the White Tower are partners. There's no undoing that narrative. The Blue Tower tries to underbid, but it backfires. Baldwin isn't risking his reputation for a discount. He tells them to zip it. Get out of my sight. The Blue Mage stands up, crushed, muttering threats that Oscar will pay for this humiliation. Before they hit the door, Oscar drops the final bomb. He's already patented the formula, so if they want to copy it, they gotta pay up. They'll have to cough up royalties. The blue mage was seething so hard I thought a blood vessel or maybe a hemorrhoid was gonna pop right there. His buddy played it cool though, gave the archbishop a polite nod, and breezed past our MC, leaving a specific scent trail behind him. Dude smelled like fresh mint and spearmint. Honestly, it had Oscar questioning things, like really rethinking his preferences for a second. Once the trash took itself out, the archbishop got down to business. Small talk over. It was time to talk numbers. The blue tower had lowballed with 2 million coins. Oscar looked him dead in the eye and said, "If they want 2, I'll take 5. The archbishop looked like he just swallowed a lemon, aggressive negotiation at its finest. Cut to a few hours later at the White Tower. Fidalina is staring at a check for 10 million coins like it's an alien artifact. She is practically catatonic, and it's all thanks to Oscar. Suddenly, our boy went from zero to hero, getting hyped up by everyone. Even Gandalf is losing it. The old man is genuinely impressed and demanding the full play-by-play on how Oscar pulled this off. How'd he double the price? Simple. Advertising fees. Oscar squeezed the archbishop for every penny. Absolute savagery. Our protagonist isn't playing games. He's playing the whole system. The White Tower had to drop an official press release immediately. The narrative. The archbishop had a divine revelation about the plague, which miraculously helped them rush the vaccine. Yeah, right. The guy wants to be the next cardinal so bad he can taste it. Buying a miracle from the goddess to hit that goal, he paid top dollar for the clout. The catch. The White Tower has exactly 1 week to ship the goods. Gandalf is stunned by the sheer audacity and the insane profit margins. Fidalina, she totally forgot she was supposed to punish Oscar. Money talks. But now Oscar needs manpower, specifically mages above level 4. They need to broadcast this to the whole tower. Fidalina's flustered, asking, "What do I even say to get them here?" Gandalf's like, "Simple. Bribery. Level 4 and up. Paid gig. And the kicker? Meat at every single meal." That did the trick. A few hours later, a crowd of hungry candidates showed up. Oscar tried to take charge, asking the seniors to listen up, and got totally ghosted. They ignored him hard. So our boy decided to crank up the volume literally with some ear-splitting sound magic. That got their attention. With everyone clutching their ears, he laid it out. "We need to brew these vaccines and I need all hands on deck." But the seniors weren't vibing with it. The tension in the room was thick. Oscar didn't expect this much pushback. He whispers to Frank, "Yo, why the hate?" Frank spills the tea. Oscar's reputation is trash. He's been a menace for years. Arrogant, annoying, and a total drunk. Not exactly leader material. Then one girl steps up with the real questions. "The production method is lost tech. How are we supposed to make this?" The crowd murmured, expecting a total fail. Oscar drops the bomb. "I recovered it." The room went cold. They all thought he blew the budget on some untested, sketchy recipe. Oscar shut that down fast. "Tests are done. The contract is signed. We are legit." He stood his ground like a boss. But he kept it real. Leaking this recipe would be a disaster. He looked around and admitted he had no clue why any of them were still sticking around this dump of a tower. That ticked off the girl. She rolled her eyes, basically saying, "I wasted my time coming here for this clown." She claimed anyone with a brain would walk away. But Oscar cut deep. He told them he knew exactly what they sacrificed to stay here. He called out Lena, a level 5 mage. "You turned down the red tower." Multiple times. The room went silent. Turns out our MC did his homework. He memorized the files on every single one of these background characters. Even the girl with the glasses, who looks like a total NPC. He got vulnerable for a second, admitting that he probably wouldn't have been strong enough to turn down those offers. But they did. They stayed. Lena realized the truth. The elders knew everyone was being headhunted. They just played dumb because they didn't want to guilt-trip the students. Talk about emotional damage. And right now, this is the darkest, coldest winter the White Tower has ever seen. And yet these mages are still standing here. That's the pitch. Oscar decided to trust them with the secret recipe. "If I can't do this with loyal people like you, then I can't do it at all. If you want to walk, I get it." Reverse psychology masterclass. Our boy even squeezed out a fake tear for dramatic effect. Oscar suited up in his PPE. Game time. Lena broke first. She walked up asking, "Do I need goggles too?" The mood shifted instantly. The squad was in. Frank was shook. He never thought Oscar had that kind of charisma. Later, Oscar dropped another bombshell about the cafeteria menu. People were skeptical. "As long as it's not rat meat, we're good." But then the truth came out. It was beef. Real beef. The crowd went feral. Morale skyrocketed, and they smashed the quota by 140%. 1 week later, Oscar's strolling through the tower, spotting flower petals on the floor. Looks like the old janitor is back on the grind. Good vibes are returning. Our boy kicked back with a newspaper to check the headlines. Pandemic over. The archbishop looks like a saint to the public. Everything played out exactly how Oscar planned it. Frank bounced in, practically radiating good vibes with the latest update. The vaccine orders were blowing up non-stop notifications. Even the Empire was sliding into their DMs for a piece of the action. Oscar kept it real though. Folk don't want to die, so yeah, it's trending now. But that hype train, it's gonna derail eventually. Once this plague wraps up, we're looking at a solid few decades of peace before the next apocalypse hits. Still, Oscar wasn't sweating the cash flow. He told Frank he had fresh recipes ready to cook up. Frank's eyes lit up, expecting something god tier. But Oscar popped that bubble fast. We're talking entry-level consumables. The kid had been fantasizing about the Stars tier, that legendary elixir from the White Tower lore. Rumor has it that stuff can literally hit the undo button on death. But brewing that now, way too much drama. They needed to level up the tower's influence before flexing that hard. Since Frank was already on deck, Oscar told him to gear up for a supply run. Playtime was over, it was time to grind. He needed specific herbs, the signature crop of Siren. But then Oscar got hit with the bad news. Those harvest grounds, gone, deleted from the map. Oscar wasn't buying it. To Frank's horror, the boss insisted on a field trip to verify the intel with his own eyes. The terrain was too savage for a carriage to handle, so they had to hoof it. Just a casual hike across a few clicks of rough country to reach the target zone. But something else threw Oscar for a loop. He casually dropped a distance in miles, only to realize the world had switched to the metric system. Meters. Great. Just one more thing he had to recalibrate in his brain. After a serious trek, they spotted a lone cabin. Frank knocked, praying someone was home. The door creaked open, revealing a mysterious figure, demanding an ID check. But before they could finish their intros, the rumble of wheels cut through the silence. A convoy rolled up. Out stepped a dude dripping in wealth, straight up, asking if the owner was finally ready to cash out and sell the property. The landowner wasn't your average grandpa. This old-timer was absolutely jacked, looking like he ate steroids for breakfast. And he had zero interest in selling. The rich guy, looking like a total villain, started throwing out insane numbers trying to buy his soul. But the old man wasn't budging. This was Ivan, a master herbalist. The buyer kept pushing, getting aggressive with his pitch, sneering that the land would be worthless once the factories moved in. But Ivan knew the truth. As long as he breathed, no smokestacks were going up here. Realizing he was talking to a brick wall, the buyer decided to cut his losses and bail. But before bouncing, he pointed out he'd trampled some precious greens. "Let me pay for the mess," he said, dripping with arrogance. He tossed a fat stack of cash on the ground like trash. Ivan just glared as the convoy turned around. That's when the rich guy clocked the visitors' outfits. Robes must be mages. His gears started turning, what were spellcasters doing out in the sticks? Then it clicked. He realized the White Tower was raking in gold from the vaccine sales. The buyer instantly raged at his driver for keeping him in the dark. If Ivan had the White Tower's deep pockets backing him, snatching that land just went from hard to nightmare mode. Time for Plan B, play dirty. He asked his driver if the hired guns were still on speed dial. He wanted the old man deleted and listed as missing so the land would hit the auction block. Yeah, it would look shady as hell, but this guy had the political clout to bury the investigation. The only wild card was if the White Tower decided to throw hands. He shrugged it off. To him, the White Tower was just a broke, washed-up relic. Meanwhile, back at the cabin, Frank was gazing up at the cosmos. Ivan had offered them a roof for the night since it was pitch black outside, and hiking back now would be a marathon. Oscar agreed that Ivan seemed like a solid dude, recalling the intel they gathered earlier. The old herbalist was fiercely loyal to the White Tower legacy. And that rich guy? Total bad news. A criminal overlord masquerading as a businessman. He'd been aggressively swallowing up territory in the region for 3 years, and other herbalists had mysteriously vanished. But Ivan wasn't an easy target. He refused to sell out to that thug, because he stood as the last guardian of the region's herbal heritage. Because of that dedication, he had protection from the imperial family keeping the wolves at bay. Oscar asked the million-dollar question, why not just take the cash? Ivan's answer was simple. It wasn't about the money. He loved this soil. Born here, raised here, and he planned to die here. That kind of loyalty convinced Oscar that Ivan was one of the good ones. Miles, away from the city smog, the stars blazed like diamonds. Frank sighed, admitting he was kinda jealous of this lifestyle, which seemed way more chill. A genius like you gets it right. Oscar turned the tables, telling Frank he showed plenty of promise himself. But Frank brushed it off as empty hype. Oscar shut that down. I don't do fake compliments, kid. Having read the archives, Oscar couldn't figure out why everyone labeled Frank as a problem child. The kid had potential. Back in the day, Oscar could navigate by the stars, but modern city lights had blinded the sky. Frank broke the silence with a serious question. Can we really bring the herb industry back from the dead? Oscar smirked. It's not impossible. They'd pitched the plan to Ivan at dawn. Suddenly our boy froze. His senses spiked. They weren't alone. 4 hostiles closing in fast, and Frank felt the panic set in. Oscar's gut sank. If Frank hadn't clocked their vibe, these intruders weren't just unfriendly, they were pros. One thug had already pitched icing Ivan only to get shot down. But now, the game board had definitely flipped. The geezer with him zero chill. He was just chasing a paycheck. Then the third guy in their squad. Cut the chatter. Quit yapping, he snapped. Rumor had it a mage was lurking nearby, and they couldn't afford any slip-ups. The rookie assassin flexed his lockpicking skills ready to breach. He figured Ivan was already catching Z's totally defenseless. He slid inside like a shadow and made a beeline for the bed. Piece of cake, right. Wrong. He saw something that froze his blood. Panic mode engaged. He scrambled for the exit, but our MC was way faster on the draw. Thwip. A spell drilled right through the assassin's skull like butter. Oscar grinned. This wind bullet tech was seriously OP. It was a legacy build from the OG Oscar's notes, mixing magic with firearm physics. Satisfied, Oscar stepped out into the night. He was ready to drop 3 more bodies. But, surprise surprise, only 2 targets waiting, a crusty old man and a redhead. They asked about their buddy. Oscar's cold reply, I put him down for a permanent nap. The old-timer just sighed. He knew that rookie was doomed. Typical stubborn kid. The redhead cut to the chase. Give up the herbalist's location, and I'll pretend you didn't just smoke my teammate. Oscar didn't budge. Negotiations over. The redhead signaled the violence, barking at the old man to unleash hell. And wow, Gramps moved with the energy of a guy half his age, but our boy wasn't sweating it. He popped a windshield and tanked the hit. Now it was Oscar's turn to dance. The veteran was impressed by the kid's moves, but he had a nasty surprise chambered for our boy. He lunged again and snapped his spear split in 2, a versatile little trick weapon designed to catch people off guard. The old man thought he had this in the bag. Big mistake. Our protagonist already had a spell charged and glowing at his fingertip. Yawn. This is boring, Oscar deadpanned, flicking 2 wind spheres at the geezer. The old man scrambled to block. He tried to parry with one of his blades, but that cheap metal, it wasn't built for this kind of magical impact. Crunch. The blade shattered. Versatile. Maybe Oscar mocked, but totally useless. Then his instincts screamed. Real visceral danger. Our boy didn't hesitate. He leaped away from the old man, just as someone brought a literal gun to a magic fight. Bang. The old man's skull exploded. Oscar stayed tensed, watching the redhead lower the smoking gun. He just executed his own partner. The redhead shrugged. If Oscar hadn't dodged, he'd be dead too. Weren't you guys on the same team? Oscar asked, genuinely confused. He was just a grunt. Replaceable, the redhead scoffed. And that's exactly why Oscar hated criminals. Zero code, zero scruples. Oscar eyed the weapon. What's that toy? The redhead smirked. It's way too pricey to be called a toy. Our boy analyzed it instantly. 3 enchantments. Acceleration, strengthening, penetration. The redhead's smirk vanished. He got serious fast. The kid had figured it out in seconds. That explains why my shield couldn't stop it, Oscar noted. Arrogant as he was, the redhead had to give props. You've got talent, he admitted, then actually offered Oscar a job. Pays generous, he promised. Oscar passed hard. Nah, I'd rather not end up with a ventilation hole in my head like your buddy, if you catch my drift. Talk was cheap and negotiations were done. Bullets started flying and Oscar dove for cover. The former White Tower Master was pinned down running on 50% mana. He knew his wind bullets couldn't outpace a firearm. He needed a brain blast. His only shot, the reload window. 2 shots, then a 1.5-second reload time. While Oscar calculated, the redhead hunted him through the plantation fields. The gunman scanned for our boy. Sensing his moment, Oscar triggered an acceleration spell and blitzed forward. But the redhead clocked him instantly, laughing. Gotcha. It looked like a checkmate, impossible to dodge. His aim was dead on. But then the impossible happened. The bullet didn't puncture the wind barrier. It slid right around it like water on oil. Click. Empty. While the bandit fumbled to reload, Oscar pounced. The thug's brain short-circuited. What did he just do to that shield? When he looked up, Oscar was in his face, finger pointed point blank. In those final milliseconds, the bandit tried to process the math. How did a low-tier mage pull that off? You wouldn't get it even if I tutored you, Oscar whispered. Boom. Enemy down. With the threat neutralized, the gun caught Oscar's eye. A problematic little artifact. Etched on the barrel was the name Trinity. Named for the big 3, acceleration, strengthening, and penetration. Honestly, a masterpiece of destruction. Surviving that wasn't luck. Oscar had tweaked the shield's friction to 0, forcing the bullet to slide harmlessly around the curve. If his physics theory had been off by a decimal, he'd be Swiss cheese right now. Heading back to the tower, he made a mental note. He seriously needed to upgrade his anti-ballistic defenses. But for now, the MC needs to secure the perimeter for Frank and Ivan. His sensory radar already pinged 4 hostiles lurking nearby. Deep in the woods, Frank is playing bodyguard for the old man. He orders Ivan to bolt, volunteering to solo the assassin himself. He puffs up his chest, claiming he's way too overpowered for a rookie mage to lose. Ivan decides not to argue and takes off running. While Ivan prays for Frank's safety, the bandit mocks the kid's arrogance. He asks why Frank didn't just bail and leave the geezer to die. But honestly, the assassin is way more interested in gutting a mage today. The old man is the target, but Frank is the trophy. He wants to test if the White Tower's reputation is real or just hype. So he decides to delete the kid from existence first. The killer lunges without hesitation. Frank throws out a wind slash to block, but the guy weaves through it like it's nothing and counters instantly. Calling it child's play, the assassin prepares to skew Frank. He taunts the boy, begging for a challenge before he lands the killing blow. That's when the bad guy realizes something feels off. His blade didn't crunch through bone or tear through muscle. It hit. Nothing. Total glitch in the matrix. By the time his brain catches up, Frank has already grabbed the sword blade with his bare hands. And the assassin's neck. Let's just say it's not attached the way it used to be. The guy collapses, drowning in a pool of his own regret. Frank definitely took that hit, but he reveals his body has a glitchy, unique constitution that defies physics. The goon hits the dirt permanently offline. Our main character, watching from the shadows of a tree, caught the entire show in 4K. He realizes Frank isn't just a gifted mage. The kid literally phase-shifted his physical form into pure wind. To hurt someone like that, you'd need high-level energy blades or magic. The MC has only read about this ability in forbidden lore. It's a technique linked to a legendary White Tower master. Oscar finally steps into the light, nearly giving the poor kid a heart attack. Frank stammers, asking how long Oscar had been watching. Oscar plays it cool, saying he was worried, but drops a nice work on the takedown. Time to regroup with Ivan. Frank starts screaming Ivan's name, and our MC realizes a painful truth about his friend. The processor inside Frank's skull is definitely outdated. We're talking single-core dial-up internet speeds here. Maybe even a Pentium chip. Sensing the old man's mana signature, Oscar points them down the right path. By sunrise, Ivan is practically crying with gratitude. Without this duo, he'd be worm food. Frank tries to be humble, claiming he didn't do much, but the MC decides to stir the pot. He points out that Frank let one bandit escape, making Frank the MVP of the old man's survival. The kid turns bright red from the praise. Mission accomplished theoretically, but that shady buyer won't quit. Ivan explains this plot of land is the prime real estate of Siren. The location is god tier, but productivity has tanked over the last 8 years. It's a side effect of magical engineering dumping toxicity into the water. It's ruining the soil and threatening the entire ecosystem, especially the herb farms. Oscar gets serious and asks the old man if his loyalty ties back to Eyes, the fourth master of the tower. The geezer confirms it. Back in the day, herbalists were treated like dirt, branded as dangerous warlocks by society. They lived like ghosts, hiding in the shadows and moving constantly to avoid persecution, until a savior showed up. Reynold Eyes, a man with revolutionary ideas, invited them all to settle in this city. He gave them a sanctuary to finally breathe. Ivan is shocked by the details, and our MC claims he just read it in a textbook somewhere. A textbook only accessible to Tower Masters, but he conveniently leaves that part out. That's why the Herbalist clan is rooted here. For the first time, these nomads had a home. The White Tower gave them dignity, so Ivan refuses to betray that legacy. Oscar appreciates the loyalty. He assures the man that the White Tower still has his back. And regarding the assassination attempt, the imperial family isn't going to let that slide. Usually the government moves at a snail's pace, but Oscar guarantees they're about to speedrun this investigation. Because Oscar is signing a massive contract with them today for the Caldina fever vaccine right in that corrupt buyer's office. The clock is ticking. They need to bail. The situation could have turned into a disaster, but Oscar already flipped the script. Suddenly, armed squads swarm the area to deliver some instant karma. The Superintendent of Internal Affairs is here personally to bag the trash. The list of charges is a mile long. The buyer is leaving in chrome bracelets. If he tries to resist, well, he won't be leaving at all. The villain screams about being innocent, but he can tell that to the judge. Sweating buckets, the thug realizes he's cooked. He tries to call his boss or bum a final cigarette to stall for time. But the superintendent isn't having it. Cuff him, boys. They aren't here to chat. The bandit screams, it's a mistake. He tries to pull the, do you know who backs me card, but the superintendent completely ignores the flex. He's acting on direct orders from the Emperor to clean up this mess. As the goons get dragged away, a bystander whispers to the superintendent, who is that kid? To mobilize the feds that fast, he must be a VIP with connections straight to the top. The Emperor is practically a stand for the White Tower, obsessing over it, but the superintendent, he just doesn't get the hype. Sure, he knows the legendary backstory, but that glory feels like a lifetime ago, and the current reality hits different. With eyes locked on the horizon, the superintendent drops the lore on his rookie. It all went down 20 years ago, he mutters. He was barely 12 when the world shifted. The year humanity finally broke the demon chains. Back then, the White Tower wasn't just a building, it was a beast of a different breed. The OGs still remember the golden era, the pure clout. But nostalgia time is over duty calls, and they have to move. They're pushing east, hunting down the factories, dumping toxic sludge into the water supply. This isn't an official order. It's the superintendent's personal crusade. His mind drifts to Oscar and Frank, the white mage duo, who handled business and completely dismantled that dangerous syndicate. The rookie asks if they can grab a bite to eat, but the boss shuts it down. Food waits, the mission doesn't. Meanwhile, back at base, Frank breathes a sigh of relief, while Oscar heads straight to debrief the higher-ups. But before they can even step inside, Gandalf intercepts them. Frank panics, mumbling some lame excuse about a code-red emergency, and tries to bolt. Gandalf eyes the exit, sensing the sus vibes, but Oscar plays it cool. Cutting through the noise, Gandalf acknowledges Oscar's massive win and demands the full rundown in his office. Oscar's already halfway there. Inside, the vibe is heavy. The old man looks drained, like the weight of the world just dropped on him. "Did Frank tell you the news?" he asks. Oscar shakes his head, sensing the tension. The news drops like a bomb. The Sirius family is recalling the boy. He's being pulled out. Our main character frowns. "Did Frank sign off on this?" Gandalf looks unsure, shrugging his shoulders. The deal is already closed, the ink dry, and the details are totally above his pay grade. Cut to Frank's room, he's already packing his life into boxes. A sharp knock echoes. It's our protagonist, and he already knows the score. Frank isn't just a mage, he's the youngest heir to a massive merchant empire. Time to return to the corporate grind, and tie the knot for the sake of tradition. It screams arranged marriage, but Frank insists the girl is actually decent. Oscar presses him. "Are you really okay with this?" The boy forces a smile, claiming his future wife must be an angel, even if they're total strangers. Oscar cuts him off. "Forget the girl. I'm talking about your dreams. Are you seriously quitting magic? Just like that?" Frank's expression crumbles. He drops the act. He believes he's trash, zero talent. That's the real reason he's folding. He thought he had main character energy. He came to the White Tower because the competition was softer, hoping to shine in a smaller pond. But reality hit him like a truck. As he spirals, Oscar grabs his shoulder. "Listen to me." Frank flinches, expecting a lecture. Instead, Oscar drops a truth bomb. "You are talented." The words freeze him. The compliment lands, but Frank's resolve is already broken. Suddenly, the door swings open. Enter the big brother. He clocks our protagonist as a friend and coldly checks his watch. "You have 5 minutes. Say your goodbyes." Oscar doesn't budge. How much, he asks. He wants a price tag on Frank's freedom. The brother scoffs. "Who do you think you are?" Oscar squares up. "A friend, and the genius behind the vaccine." Grant steps into the light, the eldest son, the heir, and the brother of the fool currently packing his bags. Oscar ignores Frank and lays out the deal. Grant looks at him like he's crazy, a kid trying to talk business with a shark. But Oscar doubles down. "Zero risk. Give me 2 years, and Frank becomes one of the top mages on the continent. Think of the long-term ROI for your family." Grant pauses. He's intrigued now. "And if you fail," Grant challenges. Oscar plays his ace. "Then you get the vaccine profits. For the next 50 years, signed, sealed, and witnessed by the Tower's vice master." Grant narrows his eyes. Why go this hard? Is my brother actually an asset, or is this just the power of friendship? Oscar doesn't blink. The answer is obvious. The kid is a goldmine. I'm rebuilding the White Tower's legacy, and Frank is the MVP. I need to make it happen. Grant smirks. "You're young. But as a merchant, he can't walk away from a gamble this spicy. But there's a catch." Oscar forgot rule number 1. Merchants trade in trust, not just coin. Prove you're not just talk. He points to his guard, a level 5 knight. "Tomorrow, you fight him. Survive, and we have a deal. Our boy is only a level 2 mage. The odds are absolute trash." "He won't use his aura blade," Grant adds. Oscar realizes the trap. They're desperate to keep the marriage, meaning the other family holds serious power. Grant turns to leave. "High noon. If you don't show up, I'll assume you folded." Frank starts hyperventilating, terrified for his friend. He knows his brother is raging and wants to publicly humiliate Oscar. "We have to talk him out of this," Frank begs. Our MC stood his ground. A 4th circle mage takes this W, no question. Frank looked like he'd just seen a ghost. The idea of speed running to that power tier in a single day. It completely broke his brain. But look, jumping from a stable 3rd circle is totally doable. Besides, the mission isn't total victory, it's just a skill check. And our boy Oscar has that in the bag, mostly because his actual game plan is way spicier than anyone realizes. Here's the kicker. The 4th circle powerhouse stepping into the ring is going to be Frank himself. Inside the training room, the guy was sweating bullets. He's been grinding for this, and failing miserably. Oscar told him to chill out, trust the process, and start that mana flow. Watching him lock in, Oscar nodded. "Not bad, kid. Not bad at all." But his sharp eyes caught the leaks immediately, tiny fractures where mana was bleeding out during circulation. Frank asked if that's just genius vision. Oscar smirked. "Nope, just him." Stunned, Frank asked if plugging those leaks equals an instant level up. Oscar shrugged it off. Most mages ignore that stuff anyway. But here's the tea, archmages, they never ignore the details. So welcome to the new morning routine. Our MC dropped a massive lore dump on exactly how to optimize the flow. If Frank wants to evolve, he's got to obsess over every single micro detail. Time to tackle the elephant in the room, that wild magic stunt from the herb garden battle. Frank hung his head, admitting he just couldn't pull it off again. He made it clear, though, it wasn't about doubting Oscar. It was pure terror. Last time he unleashed that tech, he knocked on death's door. And the older he gets, the worse the anxiety hits. Crushed by his family's massive expectations, he tried to specialize in the impossible. He stopped limiting his magic to just one limb. He thought, if I become the wind itself, I'm unstoppable. Spoiler alert, reckless move. At first, it looked like a win. Then panic set in. He couldn't hit the brakes, and half his body dissolved into pure air. His mana went nuclear. Frank totally lost it, screaming for a lifeline. If help hadn't arrived right then, he was 100% toast. Being helpless back then left a scar he still can't shake. It's a nightmare he refuses to relive. But Oscar flipped the script. He pointed out that Frank actually nailed the technique. Frank argued it only triggers when he's about to die, calling himself pathetic. Our boy Oscar wasn't hearing that noise, though. Every mage hits a wall. The fix, simple. Frank just needs god-tier mana control. Problem is that usually requires raw talent, and Frank feels capped out. But Oscar, he's got a workaround. He started sketching a summoning circle right on the floor. Frank panicked. Wait, are we signing a deal with a demon? Our boy laughed. Demons wouldn't show up even if you invited them. Nah, we're summoning a spirit. Specifically, a wind spirit to fuse with Frank. Frank, desperate for the upgrade, started reciting this super dramatic oath. Result, crickets. His spirit affinity is trash. Frank tried to save face, claiming he felt a breeze. Oscar roasted him immediately. Bro, that was just your own disappointed sigh. But hey, don't quit yet. Most humans have zero spirit vibes anyway. Frank went back to doom spiraling, thinking his only path to power was blocked. But hold up. Oscar has a plan B. A secret summoning art he picked up from the elves in his past life. Now the master steps up. He was betting everything that the Spirit King would recognize his old friend. Back in the day, he didn't do this in some gym, he did it at the World Tree. No circles needed, just a few words. Oscar commanded the wind to pull up. Boom! A massive gale tore through the room. First try, easy clap. The entity materialized, confused that a mere human actually rang the bell. It's been 27 years since anyone pulled this off. Oscar got straight to business. Let's make a pact. What's your price? The spirit waved him off. No red tape required here. It just had one question. Did he want to bond as besties with the high spirit Celestin? And our savage protagonist looked this god-tier spirit in the eye and said, no. The room went dead. It was only then he face-palmed, realizing he'd completely skipped a crucial detail. The person who actually needed a spirit was the kid standing right there. The time for the duel was now. A crowd had already formed, and even Gandalf was there. Muttering about how impossibly stubborn the Viscount was, Grant's champion was introduced, and damn, he was a legit level 5. The rules were dead simple. First one to snatch the other's necklace wins. If there was no clear winner after 5 minutes, Grant would automatically lose. A smirk played across Oscar's face. He was totally cool with those terms and itching to get started. They questioned if he was seriously going to fight in those clothes, but our hero just shrugged, saying it didn't matter, since he wasn't the one stepping into the ring. And that's when Frank finally revealed himself. His brother was left totally speechless, his brain short-circuiting as he tried to figure out what was happening. Meanwhile, Oscar recalled the exact terms of their wager. This whole thing was to prove his skill as a teacher, and he'd spent the entire day before cramming everything he knew into Frank's head. Grant was absolutely livid. He figured this was a cheap trick, assuming his knight would go easy on his little brother. But our protagonist just shook his head. He shot back that a level 4 mage actually had a way better chance of winning. Grant's jaw dropped. He knew for a fact his brother was a level 3 just yesterday. But for Frank to hit elite mage status in 2 years, our protagonist had to show his methods weren't a fluke. Grant snarled at his knight not to hold back, while our boy told Frank not to sweat it. He just needed to follow the plan. The kid took a shaky breath, but nodded, a new fire igniting in his eyes. He was absolutely determined to win this. The knight gave the young master a polite, almost pitying bow. With the match officially underway, Frank immediately started scrambling backwards, putting distance between them. This was all part of the strategy. But then, a terrifying wave of energy washed over the kid. It rolled off the knight's dangerous sword, an insane pressure that screamed power. This enemy was 100% a level 5. The guy was terrifying without even channeling his power. Frank felt himself freeze up, completely paralyzed by raw fear. But through the panic, he started to remember yesterday's training, hearing our protagonist's confident words in his head. Oscar's belief in him was an anchor. It was the spark Frank needed to get his head back in the game. He forged a blade of pure wind, his courage flaring up. It was time to snatch this victory. For the first time in his life, as he charged forward, he heard someone say they actually needed him. Frank refused to let our protagonist down. The knight deflected the attack with zero effort, but raised an eyebrow. The young master had gotten way stronger. He was even slinging 2 spells at once, but it clearly wasn't going to be enough. The knight decided he'd seen all he needed to. Time to go on the attack. In a flash, Frank was completely cornered. There was no way he could block the incoming strike. Still, he desperately launched one final wind blade. From the sidelines, Grant watched his mind reeling at how his brother had made such an insane leap in a single day. He shot a suspicious look at the protagonist, asking if he'd used some forbidden technique. But our boy just calmly promised the method was totally safe and there was nothing to worry about. Even so, Frank's explosive growth was obvious to everyone watching. The knight, however, was dead set on ending this. Frank wasn't a battle mage. A cozy desk job was a much better fit for him. Pressing his advantage, the knight's hand shot out, about to rip the necklace from his neck. Grant thought he'd sealed the deal, and just then, our protagonist declared the battle was over. This left the young man completely confused. He couldn't understand why our protagonist was suddenly smiling. Rewind to last night, they trained like crazy, perfecting his mastery of wind. But Frank was still carrying some serious trauma, making it impossible to fully turn his body into wind. There was, however, another way to use the spirit's power. Oscar was explaining a secret little loophole in the contract, a massive power-up he called Unity. It had the insane ability to turn anything that physically touched his body into pure wind. He had to keep this trump card hidden until the very last second, to completely blindside his opponent. The knight didn't even have a moment to register what happened, but the world flipped right before his eyes. Frank was suddenly holding the knight's necklace. He had won. Not even Frank himself could process what he'd just pulled off. But after a second, the reality hit, and he started celebrating like a kid on Christmas. Grant recognized that technique instantly. It was the wind god's power, something his brother should not be able to wield. Gandalf announced the match was concluded and asked if Grant accepted the result, but the dude was just completely thunderstruck. Our protagonist had coached his brother for literally one day and unlocked an entirely new level of power within him. With no other choice, he conceded defeat. Gandalf remarked it was a shame. Grant's long journey had to end here so soon. But before leaving, Grant asked them to watch over his little brother, admitting that he'd actually grown up a little. Frank, being a troll, pretended he didn't hear the super rare compliment and asked his brother to say it again, but Grant's patience had already evaporated. He just spun around and stormed off. Oscar couldn't help but laugh. His friend had totally done that on purpose. That little victory was awesome, but the next morning slammed Frank with a harsh dose of reality. He had to go through a menacing-looking door, except this place gave off zero training room vibes. The dark energy seeping from it felt more like a prison. Our boy confirmed it had in fact been used as one, but that was hundreds of years ago, he added. Frank threw his hands up, arguing he hadn't done anything wrong, and demanding to know why he was being sent to train in solitary. But this was a direct order from Gandalf himself, who had some seriously high hopes for the kid. Frank was absolutely crushed. The dude hadn't even had a moment to breathe. Now he had to use every second to grind and perfect his techniques. Our hero claimed he could handle it, but you could tell the poor guy's spirit was broken. As the door slammed shut, our protagonist sent a silent apology. After all, he was the one who pushed for this insane training. 30 days of total isolation. Oscar insisted it was the only way. Knowing how brutal it would be, the old man mentally noted they'd have to seriously pamper the boy the second he got back. As an added bonus, the kid's family company was letting them use its entire distribution network, completely on the house. It finally clicked, for Oscar Grant was a certified visionary. The White Tower's success would shower them all in riches, a major win for everybody involved. This was beyond excellent news. But the old man had another proposal for our protagonist. He asked if he'd be down to give a lecture. This totally blindsided Oscar. I mean, sure, he was probably capable of pulling something like that off. But wasn't his main focus supposed to be the potions department? Intrigued, our boy pressed Gandalf if there was some hidden agenda behind this. The old man just smirked. Our hero was always quick on the uptake. He then asked if he'd ever heard of the Night of Mages, an annual event where mages from every tower flex their power and progress. The Emperor's idea was for it to be a bonding experience, but in reality, it devolves into a massive brawl every single time. It should have been scrapped years ago. Oscar wondered why Gandalf was even bringing this up now. The palace would drop the deets after the new year, but Gandalf's real anxiety was the Black Tower. They were gunning for a top 4 spot, and the White Tower was looking like a prime target. In short, they needed to get ready for a fight. That was all the motivation our protagonist needed to light a fire in his soul. Like a straight-up JoJo character, he guaranteed he would get it done. Marching down the hallway, Oscar was seething. The absolute nerve of the Black Tower, to even think they could pull a stunt like that. On the bright side, Frank was now a level 4. This glow-up happened because the spirit remembered our hero and actually honored its promise. The thing is that spirit hated being summoned by one person, just to be handed off to another. So Oscar summoned it one last time to relay a message. Go tell Salafrion of the Silence that the White Mage has returned. At first, the wind spirit was enraged that our hero dared speak the Spirit King's name, but the real shocker was discovering this human's true identity, which prompted a direct command from the Spirit King himself. Oscar just grinned, saying he wouldn't spoil the big reveal just yet. He got the update. Salafrion had already given his seal of approval. It wouldn't be a formal contract, just a power transplant. For our boy, that was perfect. He also had a message to receive, a haunting echo of an old vow he once made. A vow our protagonist was determined to fulfill this time. He couldn't make it happen in his past life, on account of dying. Then the announcement went up, a reinterpretation of the fundamentals of magic. But before keeping that ancient promise, our boy had this family to deal with first. A red-haired kid was milling about and instantly recognized his classmates as they waited for the lecture. He asked if it was exclusively for level 3 students, since he didn't spot any upperclassmen. A girl speculated that the tower was finally stepping up its game, especially with Gandalf personally promoting the event. It was even in the same auditorium where the Imperial Observation Seminar took place. This lecturer had to be someone legendary. A sneering voice cut through their excited chatter, telling them to stop getting their hopes up. You're making a huge deal out of nothing. He introduced himself as Damien, the son of Count Proud. The girl Rosa fired back that he was being a total downer. The tower was finally investing in them, so they were convinced the speaker had to be legit. But among the entire crowd, only one low-level mage was missing. Their argument was instantly silenced. A spell had just blanketed the entire room, muting every single voice. Our protagonist's voice then echoed, "It's a pleasure to meet you. From this point forward, I will be presenting the reinterpretation of magic's fundamentals." Naturally, every mage in the room was shook, seeing as our boy was still rocking a level 2 status. You could practically feel the disappointment radiating off them. Oscar announced that anyone with a complaint was free to walk out. They weren't his students, and he wasn't their professor. But there was a catch. They had to prove they were skilled enough to not need his lesson. They had a 10-minute time limit to verbally declare that they didn't want to stick around. For the class, sounds super simple, right? The students were absolutely fuming. It wasn't simple at all, because of his sound-canceling magic. But it quickly dawned on them that this was a test, and since the caster was only a level 2, it had to be breakable. This was his way of saying, if you can't even solve this, you better sit down and listen. Oscar was dying to see what they were capable of. He had, after all, deliberately woven a few weak spots into the spell. But that didn't mean this was going to be a walk in the park. The clock was ticking down, final minutes, bleeding away, and not a single person had cracked the code. Until one kid, Damien, shot to his feet with a cocky grin. He was absolutely sure he'd nailed it. Our guy Oscar knew a rookie when he saw one. He played along, giving the kid a congratulatory nod. Damien just bragged that it was a total cakewalk, and that's when a sharp chime echoed through the room. The 10 minutes were up. Damien was the only one who had seemingly crushed the challenge, and just as promised, he now had the choice to either stick around or dip. Truthfully, the kid was hooked. Bouncing would be nice, but this puzzle had seriously piqued his interest. Reading Damien's mind like an open book, Oscar decided to sweeten the deal. He offered to teach him a spell as a prize. He asked which of the basic spells was his favorite. Damien instantly replied, "Wind, Blade." Oscar smirked and told him to show it off, and the kid eagerly obeyed. After he finished, he looked up expectantly, asking if it was good enough. Oscar admitted it was solid, but then declared he was going to teach him Windblade. Damien looked completely bewildered. He asked if Oscar was blind and didn't see what he'd just done. Oscar shot back that the kid's little trick didn't even come close to his standards of quality. Then he reached out and grabbed the swirling blade with his bare hands, stating it had 2 fatal flaws. First, he said this spell isn't made of wind, and with that, he clenched his fist, shattering the blade into nothing. Oscar then asked if the kid even knew what wind was. Wind, he explained, is nothing more than moving air. Therefore, that technique you just performed was not Windblade. All of you better be paying attention to this. The magic of the White Tower demands a constant, stable flow. The moment you lose it, your spell gets obliterated just as I demonstrated. Now for the second problem. Damien, you are dumping way too much mana into that spell. You could have been so much more efficient. Our boy paused for effect before continuing his dissection of the kid's technique. He could picture his entire backstory. He probably grew up watching ridiculously powerful mages in his family, trying to copy their epic moves from a young age, but pulling that off isn't easy, so he compensated by brute forcing it with more mana than necessary, a garbage habit he still had. Damien was shook. That was 100% accurate. Now that you know the problems, you can actually improve your technique, Oscar said, but it's a real shame. You won't be staying for the class. That flex was all it took. Damien was convinced and declared he was staying to learn. That was a result our protagonist had already banked on. Fast forward 3 weeks and the rumor mill was churning. People were whispering that this new instructor was a seriously gifted teacher. The catch: they thought he was only good for newbies, totally ignoring the fact that even some level 4 mages were secretly sitting in on his classes. The mages gossiping about it were actually considering going. A girl with long hair, listened to their entire conversation locked in. If they didn't move now, they weren't getting a seat. The first guy jumped up and like dominoes, everyone else who had been eavesdropping did the same and made a run for it. The rookie mages were stunned. The lecture hall was overflowing with way more students than usual. Even Maxim, a total big shot, decided to show up. Our protagonist strode into the hall, greeting the massive crowd with a good morning. Today he announced we're going to learn a critical spell. The room was electric with anticipation, but when Oscar revealed they were going to learn more about wind, you could feel the excitement drain from the room. That was the most basic of the basics. Maxim, who had only come to observe, was so baffled he had to speak up. He called out asking if Oscar was really going to teach only about wind. After pulling in such a huge crowd, Oscar just said yes and asked the senior mage to give a little demonstration. Simply by opening his palm, a ferocious gale ripped through the entire hall. Our boy calmly thanked him for his participation. Then he called on Amy, a blonde girl, and asked her to cast her wind spell too. Totally embarrassed at being put on the spot, she did what he asked. Her wind was incredibly gentle, a soft and comforting breeze. Oscar then asked if anyone could explain the difference between the two spells, beyond the obvious physical power. That same sharp female student, from the beginning of the chapter, spoke up about the mana's temperament. Our protagonist confirmed that Veronica's answer was spot on. The exact same spell can vary based on the mana's temperament, which is what's so wild since the casting formula was identical. One was a destructive force, while the other was a soothing whisper, a difference so intense, it's hard to believe they were even the same type of magic. Oscar then asked if anyone could explain what mana temperament actually is. A student asked if he meant the 4 types. Oscar corrected him, stating that those are the 4 systems. To understand mana temperament, they had to go back to the very roots of the White Tower. Balance. He then asked why the white and blue towers are the symbols of this concept. A student correctly answered that it was because of the elements they command. Red and gold are powerful and fast, but they aren't harmonious. There is no such thing as cold fire. However, wind and water can become infinitely cold or intensely hot. That's why they represent balance, but there is a crucial difference between them. The conditions for heating water are pretty simple. At atmospheric pressure, all you have to do is apply energy to it. However, he continued, heating the air is an even simpler task as it effortlessly assimilates with its surroundings. As he explained this, several students felt a warm breeze suddenly wash over them. While most people just felt a chill, Oscar saw the truth. Wind was the element of ultimate freedom. It could rage like fire, strike like lightning, or flow unpredictably like water. Its potential was limited only by the caster's imagination. This element could embody any personality, syncing up with literally anything. Oscar then posed the question to the class. What did the wind truly represent to them? And right in the middle of his lecture, it looked like Maxim was having a full-on spiritual experience. Our hero knew exactly what was happening. He threw a warning to the student next to the old-timer, telling him not to lay a finger on him. Oscar ordered everyone to give him space. The professor was in the middle of a massive breakthrough, a moment of pure enlightenment. This was his own personal awakening. A few moments later, Maxim's eyes snapped open. Oscar immediately checked on him, but sadly, Maxim hadn't quite broken through to level 8. Despite that, he grabbed our boy in a massive, grateful hug. But Oscar flipped it, saying that since Maxim was the tenured professor, our boy was the one who should be expressing his gratitude. Because of this power move, Oscar's future classes were about to get a whole lot smoother now that he had officially earned Maxim's respect, right in front of the entire mage assembly. But the biggest win of the day was catching the eye of Veronica, one of the key figures old Oscar had been keeping tabs on. The very next day, he headed straight for the training room, all because Veronica had called it an interesting place. But our hero had to figure out why she'd given him such a look of pity when she found out he'd never even heard of the facility. As he stood before the entrance, Oscar started getting his own ideas. Only 3 out of 300 training rooms were built like this one. Maybe this place really was on another level. Stepping inside, he immediately started scanning his surroundings. The energy in here felt completely different. An artificial intelligence suddenly chimed in, offering to support his training session. Oscar instantly clocked the magical engineering at play. Man, the Golden Tower must be absolutely raking it in. The AI offered to set up a personalized training regimen, but he turned it down, so it then asked what difficulty level he wanted to tackle, letting him know there were 100 different training programs available. Oscar figured he'd start at stage 1. 3 glowing orbs materialized in front of him. The objective: destroy them with magic or just straight up punch them. Before the AI could even finish the instructions, our boy had already vaporized all 3 orbs, just to get a feel for the challenge. He immediately decided to crank up the difficulty. Our protagonist jumped straight to level 100 and the AI warned him that anything from level 80 and up was seriously dangerous because the orbs moved at insane speeds. Oscar wasn't expecting the system to be so dramatic, but as he was stretching, something zipped right past his face. The new goal: destroy 1,000 orbs. without using any long-range magic, and he couldn't get tagged more than 10 times. With the rules set, Oscar went on the offensive. He unleashed a volley of attacks, but instantly realized that at this rate, his mana would be completely drained. He had to be way more efficient, so he switched tactics, launching gusts of wind so small and precise they looked like a storm of needles shredding a huge number of orbs. Our boy's new strategy was working like a charm, but he still had to stay frosty. If even one of those things clipped him, it was going to leave a serious mark. After what felt like an eternity panting and sweating, the AI congratulated him on clearing the stage. Our hero just smirked, admitting it was a decent warm-up. Apparently the mages of this generation run these drills from a young age, which just proves they're built different. Shaking it off, Oscar got back on his feet, ready to keep grinding. But his session was suddenly interrupted by a visitor. It was Veronica. She admitted she didn't actually think our protagonist would take her suggestions seriously, but he shot back with his personal creed, a sound body before a sound mind. Oscar played it cool, saying he was just checking the place out before wishing her a good workout. But Veronica knew that line was from the legendary Great Sage, also named Oscar, not the punk she was used to. The Oscar she remembered always looked down on her, even though they were both orphans. This sudden personality switch was seriously messing with Veronica's head. Turning to the AI, she requested difficulty level 50. She also casually asked if the leaderboard had been updated, and the artificial intelligence confirmed it had. Her jaw nearly hit the floor. Some anonymous user had rocketed to first place, clearing level 100 in under 10 freaking minutes. She demanded to know who it was, but the AI shut her down, citing data privacy protocols. Veronica's mind raced. Maybe one of the elders did it for a laugh. No, only mages at level 5 could even attempt a ranked run. A sub 10-minute clear. That was a first ever record for the entire continent. And then it clicked. The only person it could have been was the guy who had just walked out. Later, back in the corridors, Oscar was already dreading how sore he'd be tomorrow when he bumped right into Maxim. The two exchanged a friendly greeting, and Maxim mentioned he needed to ask him about something. It turns out Fidelina reported that merchants were suddenly refusing to buy potions from the White Tower. The word about the drama with the Blue Tower must have gotten out. Our boy was absolutely sick of these petty commercial games. And to make his morning even better, the breakfast line was snaking out the door, ratcheting up his irritation. That's when he caught a snippet of conversation between some other guild members. Oscar pieced it together. They were Win Knights pulling double duty as couriers. He instantly got the vibe that the delivery gig paid peanuts. The only real upside, brownie points with the citizens. But what kept these knights hustling were some serious performance bonuses for hard work. And that sparked an idea in Oscar's mind. He casually strolled over, cutting into their chat. He had one simple question: did they actually meet people face to face on their routes? They confirmed it. Every single drop-off required a signature directly from the person who placed the order. With a quick thanks, Oscar bolted from the cafeteria. A brilliant, risky idea was taking shape, and he had to find Gandalf now. His pitch was simple: piggyback on the delivery service to launch a door-to-door sales operation. Gandalf, however, was immediately skeptical. He argued that the White Tower's high-grade potions weren't exactly everyday items. But Oscar shot back, saying he'd whip up something new. And the best part, they wouldn't have to start from scratch. He proposed tweaking their already solid recovery potion, tailoring it for very specific demographics. It was a classic marketing pivot. By retargeting a new core audience, they could boost their sales volume per customer and expand their reach exponentially. First rule: don't call it a potion. The scene shifts. Days later, we find an old man perched in the town square, grumbling to himself. He's lamenting his lost youth and vanished energy. Right on cue, an air knight approaches with a delivery, a letter from a faraway friend. They exchange a few pleasantries, and the old man opens up, admitting he just doesn't have the same fire he once did. Seizing the moment, the air knight leans in. He offers the man a chance to try something revolutionary, the Magic Tower's latest breakthrough, a potent new tonic. He reveals its name, M0. The name alone grabs the old man's attention. This wasn't for adventurers. It was designed specifically for the elderly. The pitch is smooth. It reinforces the immune system and revitalizes your energy. Then the salesman plays his card casually, asking if he knows that other old gentleman from down the street. Because that guy, after trying this remedy, is now getting ready to hike a mountain, bad knees and all. Then, in a hushed, confidential tone, the salesman drops the bombshell. This tonic was personally developed by the White Tower's own prodigy, Oscar Cruzian. Oscar's reputation was already legendary, so the old man was sold. He immediately asked for the price. The damage: a mere 30 coins. The instructions were simple: 1 bottle a week. Still, the old man hesitated, feeling the price was a little steep. He'd been burned before by other shady products and false promises. But the salesman was adamant, assuring him this was different. The White Tower's reputation is on the line, he said. In fact, let me make you a proposal. The next morning, the old man shot out of bed, a surge of vitality coursing through him. He couldn't help but wonder, could it be the tonic? The feeling stuck with him all day. Later, he ran into his old crew who were shocked to see him. They genuinely thought he'd kicked the bucket. Turns out he'd been laying low for a couple of days. They were in the middle of a heated chess match, and our guy was absolutely dominating. His focus was razor sharp. One of his buddies joked, asking if he'd found an elixir, while another leaned in, desperate to know his secret. Cornered, the old man finally spilled the beans. He'd been trying a new tonic from the White Tower, and let him tell you the hype was real. Cut back to Oscar's room where a crisis is brewing. A colleague shoves a newspaper into his hands, her face pale with worry. The headline screams the news. The Blue Tower just launched a 50% discount on their entire potion inventory. Oscar's reaction, he calls it cute, but his associate is panicking. A move like this could completely demolish their profits. Oscar, cool as ever, predicts their desperate sale won't last even 3 weeks. She's not convinced. It's still a massive threat, one that could literally force them out of the market. Oscar shuts down all her frantic suggestions. He sees this for what it is, a pure pressure tactic, and using a health crisis to sell medicine. That would be a public relations disaster. Seeing the opportunity in the chaos, Oscar asks a critical question: how's their potion stock looking? She informs him their inventory is so ridiculously huge that if hundreds of vials were to vanish, no one would even notice. This was the answer he was hoping for. He's got a plan to rebrand their existing potions under his new Zero series of tonics. It was a genius way to move product that would otherwise just collect dust. And his sales strategy was even smarter, a progressive discount. The concept is simple: the more you buy, the more you save. As for marketing, they'd drop a little cash at the Information Guild. Their mission to start a little rumor about the M0 tonic. A spicy one. Something about how it helps with virility. His colleague is skeptical that the strategy will pay off, but Oscar just smirks and tells her to sit back and watch. Flash forward 3 weeks. Inside, the Blue Tower, chaos is erupting. Remember that hater mage from the start of the story? Yeah, he's strutting around with a smug grin plastered on his face, absolutely certain they've finally crushed the White Tower. He just knows his boss must be ecstatic. Right on cue, the department head storms over, demanding to know if he's seen the latest news. The mage, bubbling with excitement, says he hasn't had the chance. That arrogant smile is the last straw. The department head smacks him square in the face with a rolled-up newspaper and snarls at him to read what happened. The results were a catastrophe. Their aggressive price-slashing strategy had backfired spectacularly, costing them a massive amount of profit. The White Tower's tonic is absolutely blowing up. We're talking 10 million vials sold in a single month. You just know their jealous rival did not see this coming. A huge part of that sales boom came from door-to-door marketing, and in a total power move, our protagonist publicly thanked the Blue Tower for the idea, basically rubbing their faces in how to properly make bank. Now, the Blue Tower is in a seriously awkward spot, staring at those insane sales numbers. And that chart doesn't even show the full picture because public opinion is through the roof. That hater rival of theirs, he's about to be working overtime. Even if the guy slaved away for free for the rest of his days, he couldn't even begin to cover the catastrophic losses he caused on the eastern continent. Suddenly, the newsfeed changes. A colossal creature is on a rampage, and a squad of swordsmen is desperately trying to hold it back, but their entire formation is getting shattered. These warriors are completely out of their league, frozen as the beast proves to be overwhelmingly powerful. And then, from the chaos, a lone figure appears. This mysterious person was clearly hunting the creature. They deliver an ultimatum: it's time to return to your domain, and if it refuses, it's going to be turned into nothing but dust. The figure whispers a technique: relentless wind. An attack erupts, shredding the monster into countless pieces. The mysterious woman sighs. These kinds of incidents are happening far too often. From her distinct robes, the warriors realize she's from the White Tower. The woman approaches a man named Yang, who apologizes for his rugged appearance. With the threat neutralized, she finally lowers her hood. It's Sasha, the master of the White Tower, and plot twist, our hero's disciple from his past life. She wants to know if the Nine Dragon Sect's leader delivered the package she was expecting. Instead, she's handed an urgent report from the Empire, detailing a flood of news about the White Tower. Sasha's gut clenches, fearing the worst, maybe terrible press, or that they'd gone bankrupt in the last 2 months. What she doesn't realize is that every single piece of news is glowing. The moment her eyes scan the first headline, she practically has a heart attack. The success is so off the charts, it feels like a fantasy cooked up just to make her happy. Sasha had no idea that the delivery service side hustle would be a part of it. She never launched it with that purpose. Her true objective was something else entirely. Shaking off her shock, she announces her departure, ordering the payment to be wired directly to the Imperial account. In the blink of an eye, Sasha vanishes into thin air. While teleporting, her mind races, trying to process what could have possibly happened. Back at the White Tower, she needs to see this with her own eyes. Cutting back to our protagonist, the blonde girl declares he is without a doubt a mage. But Oscar plays dumb, wondering why she'd say such a thing. The truth, he managed to completely destabilize the Blue Tower with a single strategic interview. Tonic sales exploded thanks to his maneuver. Now other cities are clamoring to get their hands on the product. Since things are going so well, the girl has already pitched it to the military, although they haven't committed to buying just yet. With no more fires to put out, she tells the protagonist she doesn't need to file a report. However, she's completely awestruck by everything that's transpired. All that's left is to prepare the monthly sales performance review. Once that's taken care of, Oscar can finally focus on the tower's internal stability, like excavating and restoring ancient magic tomes. But even though the original Oscar from this lifetime was a certified genius, it would look incredibly suspicious if he started dropping groundbreaking magic theories out of nowhere. Our boy needs a proxy to publish under someone with enough clout and respect. Man, it would be perfect if a person like that just fell right into his lap. Down the sunlit corridors of the White Tower, a mage strolls, stretching his arms as if seeing the sun for the first time. He remarks that it's been a long while since he's felt sunlight. Maxim and Fidalina immediately rush to greet him. His name is Schweine, and he's just emerged from a long period of isolation. The poor guy locked himself away for 3 months straight, all for his personal research. He's a bona fide expert in magic theory, but he's been completely consumed by the White Knight incident from years ago and has made zero progress. Fidalina knows it's been 7 years since this man began his research, and he seems to be hopelessly deadlocked. Seeing his practical struggles, Maxim suggests our protagonist as a research aide, but Schweine flatly rejects the offer, claiming his work is way too sophisticated for a mere level 1 mage. That's when they inform him that our boy has already hit level 2. He's also stunned by Fidalina's complete 180. She used to loathe Oscar, but now she's defending him. Only then does he get the full briefing on the recent changes. Around the tower, all the mages seem ecstatic, like they've all just hit the lottery. And this wave of morale was sparked by our protagonist, who is now unlocking his true terrifying potential. After getting properly caught up, Schweine is thoroughly impressed with our boy's achievements, and the other 2 elders can't stop singing his praises, insisting that Oscar is an absolute monster of a talent. Now that he's in the loop, he decides he'll meet with Oscar, but he's making sure to keep his expectations in check. The issue is that his research is just that complex. He says observing the same thing from the rooftop versus the ground floor yields completely different results. To be specific, his ultimate goal is to restore the legendary work that the wisest of all mages once pursued, the Great Oscar. Later, our protagonist is informed that he's been summoned for a surprise evaluation. His evaluator is Professor Schweine, the top expert in magic theory, and the recovery of ancient magics lost to time, all for the sake of his current research. This dude needs a lifeline, and a desperate mark is exactly what our hero has been searching for. Schweine practically apologizes for making the kid endure this whole exam, even knowing he's desperate for help. But Oscar just plays it cool, acknowledging that it's totally logical for him to want a competent assistant. By absolutely crushing this test, our protagonist has just manufactured the perfect cover story. Nobody is going to second-guess the work of a measly level 2 mage, not when the professor himself is heading up the research. The test was a total joke, way easier than he expected. Any level 6 mage would have said the same thing. This professor isn't looking for a genius. He just needs someone who can catch basic mistakes. This research has to be in its final phase. Schweine watches our protagonist, his eyes filled with a new kind of intrigue. He never dreamed a kid would blaze through the questions this fast, unless, of course, he has the mind of a high-level archmage. Seeing him already on the last page, Schweine thinks maybe, just maybe, this boy could actually be useful. The only problem is that the final questions are notoriously brutal, but then Oscar's eyes lock onto the page and he instantly recognizes it. This is the very magic he created in his past life, and he can see the materials needed to cast it, sitting right here in this room. At last, our hero puts his pen down. The test is finished. Schweine praises the boy's performance, but a hint of skepticism clouds his face, especially since he blew through that final question in seconds. It almost felt disappointing, but when he started to actually read the kid's answer, his entire opinion flipped on a dime. Every single answer up to this point is perfect, flawless. We're talking about a level of understanding that even a seasoned professor would struggle to achieve. Visibly hooked, Schweine asks our hero if he's absolutely certain about the answer to the final question. Oscar says bet, but the professor is laser-focused on the 4 specific mana values he jotted down. Our protagonist simply points to his use of the fluid mana value and asks if the professor doesn't see it the same way. In that instant, it was like he handed over the key that the professor had been hunting for all this time. He demands the boy join him for a practical demonstration of these values, effective immediately. A short while later, Schweine was just staring, completely blown away by what they had accomplished. He declares that our hero is going to be listed as a co-author on the official thesis, not just some research assistant. Oscar immediately tries to turn it down, knowing that kind of attention is the last thing he needs. But Schweine reveals that the last question wasn't even his. It was a legacy problem left behind by a previous generation, created by the great Oscar himself. The magic is called Ouroboros. Our protagonist is reeling. He has no idea why this spell was dug up. let alone why it took them 7 years to do it. The entire principle is to inject mana just once, generating a nearly infinite current of wind. In theory, it's a limitless mana source. But to the man who invented it, it was a spectacular failure. Humanity had already conquered all the base elements, and yet they could never grasp the final frontier, the sky itself, and its boundless infinity. The Blue Sky Project was designed to shatter that very barrier. During the Great War against the demons, a special vessel was engineered to seize a tactical advantage. Ouroboros was meant to be its beating heart, its power source, but the entire project was ultimately shut down because the magic couldn't generate enough raw power. Still, Oscar is deeply fascinated. As a weapon, it was a bust, but as an energy source for other things, it's a monster. The professor is bursting with excitement to share the news with Sasha, and that's when it finally dawns on our protagonist that this revolutionary magic is being used for a delivery service. The sheer mediocrity of it all leaves our hero completely gutted. He scoffs at the pathetic result, but for the professor, this breakthrough is the first step in 7 years towards conquering the heavens. Oscar flat out asks if he's trying to tackle the same impossible challenge from the past. Schwein's eyes gleam as he says, yes, the magic will be the engine, but he knows that alone is not enough to get the vessel flying. The professor completely agrees, which is why this time they'll be using a few other tricks. Those other tricks instantly hook our protagonist's curiosity. In 23 years, the world had changed dramatically. Schwein reveals their secret weapon is magical engineering, something that could rewrite the outcome from the past. During the great Oscar's original research, the Golden Tower had lent their aid and were the ones who successfully developed magical engineering. It hits our protagonist that he should have been the one to discover this first, but unfortunately he was a little preoccupied with being dead. By leveraging magical engineering, it might finally be possible to bring that flying vessel into reality. The professor's new plan revolves around a battery. It's designed to constantly amplify mana, creating a powerful heart that will pump out an infinite stream of energy. Our hero immediately asks if the Golden Tower is aware of this research, but the professor says no. It turns out the Golden Tower considers the airship to be a colossal waste of time, so they're pouring their efforts into other ventures. An iron horse that runs perpetually on land. They're calling it a train. Knowing the master of the Golden Tower, our protagonist knows he wouldn't back a pointless project, but it's definitely not going to be as world-changing as his own airship. Suddenly, he understands the professor's real motive. The delivery service is just a front to monopolize the skies. The professor just grins and confirms he's correct. All transportation of goods is currently done by boat and carriage. The train will definitely improve things, but when their airship finally takes flight, there will be no contest. This could trigger a new beginning for all of civilization. Their grand strategy is to unveil this monumental achievement during the White Night Festival, a victory that was only made possible because of our hero's critical contribution. A wave of awe washed over Oscar. This was a dream he had long since buried, but his student, he hadn't forgotten. In that moment, the master within him reawakened. He declared to the professor that they had to push the boundaries even further. Their new mission to forge a working prototype and unveil it that very night, a feat truly worthy of the White Tower's legacy. A physical creation would slam home the reality of their work far more than some abstract theory ever could. The protagonist's fire was contagious, and the professor, now fully invested, shared a trove of confidential materials, insisting he absorb every detail. But as Oscar scanned them, he realized he was looking at completely alien formulas. The professor explained it was all connected to battery production. Our boy, intrigued, asked for some time to decipher these new mysteries. His professor agreed, admitting the material was revolutionary. Cracking it would be a monumental challenge. But our boy was already buzzing with adrenaline, ready to dive headfirst into the research. Just before they could begin, however, the professor stopped him, needing to say something critical. Oscar, assuming the worst, promised he could keep a secret, but that wasn't the issue. Instead, the professor wanted to offer an apology. The unexpected words sent a jolt of panic through our hero. He thought his cover was blown. The professor warned him that this path was incredibly perilous. Once the Golden Tower caught wind of their work, they would unleash everything they had to crush them, putting their very lives on the line. The news was a strange relief for our protagonist. His secret was safe for now. Schwein accused the boy of being numb to the threat, but our hero knew the stakes all too well. He was simply choosing optimism as his weapon. If he allowed fear to dictate his moves, he'd be paralyzed into inaction, and that was the one thing that truly terrified him. This raw determination left the professor speechless. If this research succeeded, the White Tower could reclaim its former glory. That was a prize worth any price. The professor felt a surge of respect for the boy's incredible spirit. Now he too was fired up, ready to tackle the project alongside our protagonist. Day one of their collaboration had them dissecting the real-world impact of a single equation. The math showed immense power, but they had to figure out how to stabilize the vessel containing it. 4 days flew by in a blur of calculations, constantly tweaking the theory while obsessing over safety protocols to make their design foolproof. It suddenly dawned on Oscar that they had skipped at least 2 meals. It was time for a tactical retreat with more coffee. But just then, the room plunged into darkness. Another blackout. They were happening more and more often these days. Oscar insisted they use this as a sign to get some rest. After 6 days, a thought kept nagging at him. The professor credited him for their insane progress, but our protagonist felt that Schwein would have cracked it eventually on his own. They were moving at a terrifying pace. The vessel was actually going to become a reality. To dodge the impending sentimental moment, Oscar quickly steered the conversation elsewhere. Just then, a chime echoed through the room. Oscar was summoned to the Vice Master's office. Schwein waved him off, promising to wrap up the battery and telling him not to sweat it. Gandalf brought up the power outages that had been plaguing them. With the situation getting worse, the power plant needed a serious, deep clean. Our boy immediately volunteered, earning a grateful look from Gandalf. They hadn't been able to tackle it before, due to being severely short-staffed. The mission was to clear out all the slime, to prevent future blackouts. He'd be partnered with Veronica for the job the next day. Hearing her name gave our hero a slight pause. This type of job was usually a 2-person task for low-level mages, and from what he'd heard, she was going through a rough patch. Gandalf suggested our protagonist could lift her spirits, a task he accepted with a knowing smile. He understood the old man was asking him to mentor her. The next morning, Veronica ripped into him for being late, despite the fact that he was a full 5 minutes early. As their carriage set off heading toward their assignment, Veronica stated that this wasn't going to be some lecture. Oscar already knew they were headed to the power plant. What Veronica was making crystal clear was that she was running this show. She had way more field experience, and he was to remember that. Oscar got the message loud and clear: don't play the teacher. The two journeyed in a thick, uncomfortable silence. Oscar couldn't help but notice the exhaustion etched on her face and asked if she'd been sleeping. She shot back, telling him to shut it so she could try to catch a nap. But our boy pressed on, asking if something was weighing on her, because he was already brainstorming ways to help. If an opportunity presents itself, you have to seize it. According to her file, Veronica possessed an incredible talent. Now our protagonist was dying to know why that phrase was highlighted so intensely. He couldn't let this chance slip by. Our guy keeps trying to break through her defenses, but it turns out Veronica's lack of sleep was his fault. She was desperately trying to master wind magic as powerful as Maxim's, and her failure was driving her to train to the point of collapse. Finally, acknowledging his persistence, Veronica challenged him. How exactly could he help? Oscar suggested that if she's hit a wall in her growth, it probably stemmed from his last lecture on mana temperament. She confessed her goal was wind, like Maximus. But no matter how hard she grinded, she was getting 0 results. Oscar looked at her and said the answer was obvious. That's because that path was never meant for you. Veronica bristled, assuming he was judging her abilities. He then leaned in and asked, "Do you even know what kind of wind I have?" She's already decided he must be stale and arrogant, but Oscar just claims he's packing a gentle, pleasant wind, says he's famous for it even. Veronica hits him with a hard, "Never heard of it." In his past life, sure, that might have been his brand. But this new him, he's not buying his own hype about some warm breeze. And besides, Veronica wants a wind that's a raging inferno, something powerful and searing. But mana temperament isn't something you just wish for. You have to find the one that fits, the one that's a mirror to your own soul. And that suddenly gets Veronica's gears turning. If that logic holds up, then our guy's wind should be as dull and self-important as he is. They finally roll up to the power station, and Oscar's eyes immediately clock a couple of details. The entire place is littered with slimes. So that's what's been knocking out the power so often. Using her wind like a hydraulic press, Veronica starts systematically pancaking the creatures. And watching her, it suddenly clicks for our hero, where her real talent is buried. It's her explosive acceleration and blinding speed. Every move she makes is a blur. If only she knew a projectile spell like the one Majiro used to use, she'd be an absolute menace. Our boy's analysis is cut short when Veronica's voice dripping with threat slices through the air. So am I the only one putting in work here? Okay, Oscar gets the hint. But then he notices something off. All the monsters are huddled right at the entrance. That observation gives him pause. He starts mapping out the space in his head, but Veronica just waves it off. Forget the inside for now. Start clearing the entrance. But he pushes back, insisting something is seriously wrong. Just watch how they're moving. They aren't trying to get in. They're trying to escape. Veronica scoffs that slimes are brainless, but our boy has the perfect comeback. Exactly. That's why they're running on pure instinct. And the #1 instinct is survival. Now she gets it and wants to know if there's some kind of apex predator lurking inside. Oscar's grim reply, "We'll have to see for ourselves." Stepping inside, their eyes land on something deeply unsettling. A colossal cocoon is taking shape. It has to be a mana silk moth. They literally feed on raw energy. It built its nest right in the station's core, and is currently in metamorphosis, which explains why the power grid has been tanking. Oscar lays out the good news and the very, very bad news. During the change, the monster is a sitting duck. Maxim could have obliterated it in 5 seconds flat. But the moment it hatches, it's driven by an insatiable hunger, devouring anything that moves. And judging by the slime's sheer terror, this transformation is just about finished. They need to brace for a boss fight. Oscar immediately snaps into a combat stance, but Veronica is still trying to process it all. When the cocoon tears open, the creature erupts newborn and ravenous. Here's the kicker. Veronica is absolutely petrified of insects. But running isn't an option. If that thing gets out, it will wipe the nearby town off the map. They have to shut this down right here, right now. Swallowing her terror, Veronica grits her teeth and barks at our protagonist to fall back. Her sudden courage catches Oscar off guard, but his mind is already racing as he casts a communication spell. The carriage has to be close enough to call for magical backup. Veronica, meanwhile, is already winding up a spell massive enough to completely vaporize the insect. She unleashes a crushing wind press that slams into the moth. Then she immediately launches another attack, readying herself to charge in close. But that charge never happens. Oscar yanks her back, using a sharp gust of wind to force her to see something on the ground. If her foot had touched the monster's shimmering dust, she would have dissolved on the spot. She was inches away from a gruesome end because of that reckless move. Oscar realizes the monster left that opening on purpose. This thing is terrifyingly smart. Veronica demands to know how he even saw the dust. It's almost invisible, she yells. He explains that he funneled mana directly into his eyes, a technique that lets him perceive every last particle in the air. She calls BS. Until she looks straight into his eyes and realizes he is 100% serious. No time to debate though, because the monster is now absolutely enraged. As they throw up a defensive wind barrier, Oscar casually mentions he'll teach her the eye trick later, but their situation is spiraling out of control. Just blocking that one attack incinerated 70% of our hero's mana. The only good news, that super move has a 5-minute cooldown. Oscar tells her they have exactly that long to finish this. It's only then that he sees Veronica has been injured. She can't feel her legs. A stray piece of shrapnel must have punched right through their shield during the blast. Feeling completely useless, Veronica begs him to run, convinced they're both about to die. But our hero has a knack for spotting a lie, and she is not telling the truth. The air around her is practically screaming with her panic. Gently, Oscar touches her forehead, and the chaotic energy instantly goes still. "You don't have to be scared," he says softly. "I would never leave this place without you. It's going to be okay. Mages from the White Tower don't leave anyone behind." He checks his reserves, 28% left. Oscar goes on the offensive. He has to end this in a single decisive strike. Watching him charge, Veronica is certain he's lost his mind. He should have taken his one chance to escape. But what she doesn't know is, our protagonist brought a very special toy with him, that weapon he took from the mercenaries, an artifact that just so happens to be the ultimate form of bug spray. The first shot explodes from the barrel, and the sound alone feels like a finishing blow. But one look at our hero's face says it all. Something went catastrophically wrong. An instant later, blinding pain erupts through his body. The sheer force of the blowback has already hit him, popping one of his joints clean out of its socket. And as if things couldn't get any worse, the creature recoils for another strike, blasting a beam straight up at the ceiling. In that instant, Oscar realizes the monster was plotting its escape from the very beginning, and he absolutely cannot let that slide. The problem, he's running on fumes, his mana is shot, and he's fresh out of options. Then, through the chaos, his eyes lock onto a single strand of silk, shimmering in the air. With every ounce of strength he has left, Oscar lunges for it. He snags it. The next second, he's being violently yanked through the air behind the escaping beast. Watching this unfold, Veronica can only think one thing. What kind of galaxy brain move was that? Dragged through the sky, Oscar's stomach is doing backflips. Ready for its meal, the moth's horrifying maw gapes open, prepared to bulk up. Just as he's about to be devoured, a flicker of victory flashes in Oscar's eyes. His magic artifact, the one that fires off devastating bullets, is finally recharged. But to use it, he has to let go of his only lifeline. He's a split second away from being swallowed like a breath mint. At the last possible moment, Oscar unleashes a blast right into the creature's dome. That's a wrap. No creature on this plane of existence is walking away. From a gaping hole blown clean through its forehead, the threat is finally neutralized, but our hero is completely juiced. Now in a dead freefall, it's Veronica's time to shine and save our boy. She whips up a massive cushion of air, completely breaking his fall. The moment they're back together, a wave of panic washes over her face. She's desperately wondering if he's even breathing. Oscar is completely out cold, and her mind spirals, imagining the absolute worst. But then a flutter of his eyelids. He's alive. And the second he shows it, he gets a beatdown from a terrified Veronica, who is not about to let him off the hook for giving her that heart attack. Maxim finally rolls up his face, etched with concern for the young students. Our boy croaks out that both of his arms are dislocated. Veronica freezes, horrified, realizing she just wailed on a guy who was already seriously injured. By the next morning, the news is already trending. Veronica shows the article to our protagonist. The media was being surprisingly kind. They were hyping up his heroic last stand, though he's totally unfazed by the clout. His friends, however, point out this could seriously boost donations. But our hero makes it clear he only did it to protect his crew. Veronica mutters that he really isn't the ambitious type. Suddenly, Frank bursts into the infirmary, looking seriously freaked out. Our hero asks if his intense training isolation is finally done. Frank says he heard the news the second he got out and rushed over, worried sick. Veronica immediately tells him he reeks. After that savage roast, Oscar clocks something different about his friend. Frank's vibe has changed, his gaze is sharper, more focused. He's undeniably a level 4 mage. Now, getting back on track, Frank asks what Veronica is even doing there, questioning why they're suddenly so tight. Veronica shuts it down immediately, saying there's absolutely nothing going on between them. After letting out a heavy sigh, she decides it's useless, stressing over rumors. She turns back to our hero and asks if he's the anonymous player who was crushing it in the training room. Oscar is completely clueless. The memory doesn't ring a single bell. Veronica just tells him to forget she ever asked. Just then, Maxim strolls into the infirmary, finding the whole squad assembled. The head honcho Gandalf wants to speak with Frank and Veronica about Frank's training and her commendable actions. The boy is absolutely buzzing about this, but Veronica plays it cool, acting completely unbothered as they head out. Maxim turns to our protagonist asking how he's holding up. Seeing that he's okay, he slides him a small red gift box. Inside is the glowing core from the monster he just took down. On top of that, it's been decided our hero also gets to keep all the silk left behind. Oscar hesitates, knowing that stuff is worth thousands of coins, but the vice director has already signed off on it. Even Fidelina backed the decision. Oscar then asks if Veronica was offered anything, but she flat out refused the reward, claiming she didn't contribute to the actual fight. Our hero realizes he has no choice but to accept the massive gift. Maxim asks if he plans to absorb it or sell it. Oscar decides he's absorbing the item. Since the creature had just finished its transformation, it was low on mana, but its core is perfect for boosting recovery. Our boy pops the core into his mouth, and an immediate surge of energy ripples through his body. With intense focus, he begins to draw in all of that raw power. Maxim figures this has to be the kid's first time absorbing mana from an elixir. Despite the chaotic incident, he had to admit the kid was seriously talented. Oscar's eyes finally snap open and he thanks Maxim for watching over him. Our boy has officially hit level 3. He also feels his injuries have vanished and his body feels immensely stronger. It was supposed to be time to rest, but looking out the infirmary window, Oscar realizes he's not the least bit tired. He decides to pick up that magical artifact again. He figures it's the perfect time to try and create a spell to cancel out the weapon's insane recoil. Meanwhile, a shadowy figure materializes at the power plant. A mage from the White Tower standing guard moves to intercept him. No one is supposed to be in this restricted area. The mysterious man simply flashes a special card. He's with the Royal Investigation Team. The security mage instantly recognized this man was a big deal and demanded to know what brought him to this location. His name is Nebula, and he was here on direct orders. It's seriously not normal for a moth of that caliber to materialize so close to the city. Now that he was granted access, Nebula began to read the mana signatures left behind in the area. He immediately dove into his analysis. He detected the traces of level 2 and level 4 mages and questioned if they were from the White Tower. The guard confirmed it, saying they'd arrived to handle the slime infestation. The investigator felt a wave of relief wash over him. Pinpointing the exact battleground, the guard noted that the moth had been incubating right there. Nebula could clearly see the remnants of the cocoon. He also pieced together that a White Tower mage had kicked off the fight. The sheer speed of their initial assault was staggering. Immediately after, the girl took a hit most likely to her leg. Now his focus sharpens on the one who must have clinched the victory. He grew intensely fascinated by the protagonist, who managed to move without leaving any significant mana trails. This was one of the cleanest scenes he'd ever analyzed. These mages had to be incredibly talented. Nebula then spotted a shell casing on the ground, a bizarre tool for a mage to wield, and this one was even modified. The mana footprints just vanished at that spot. But noticing the gaping hole in the ceiling, he deduced the mage had pursued the creature. Even for a level 4, that's an insane level of bravery. His curiosity piqued. He demanded the level 4 mage's name. The guard supplied it, Veronica. Hunting that beast alone was a legendary feat. But then the guard corrected the investigator, shaking his head. The one who actually defeated the moth was the level 2 mage. His name is Oscar. This revelation left the investigator utterly floored. It made absolutely no sense. He couldn't wrap his head around how a level 2 could leave behind such faint traces. But after mulling over our protagonist's last name, a flicker of recognition sparked in his memory. It didn't take him long to connect the dots. The vaccine incident. The guard's somber nod confirmed it. Yeah, the kid might have a garbage personality, but his competence and skill are off the charts. Nebula also instantly identified the ammunition. It was from Trinity, that mercenary's signature weapon. Still, it was shocking that a level 2 mage could even handle it. The recoil is absolutely brutal. Nebula figured the protagonist's physical stats must be monstrous. Clearly hooked, he pressed the guard to tell him everything he knew about our boy. Switching back to our protagonist, he's looking around, wondering why all the books are in this pathetic state. He's standing in the White Tower's library, which should be in far better condition. This place was once a legendary archive, home to priceless and famous volumes, but those glory days are long gone. Now, it just looks like any run-of-the-mill library. Oscar couldn't believe that hundreds of years of tradition could just vanish like this. A heavy guilt starts to crush him for everything that went down. His mind flashes back to his last night alive. 20 years ago, he'd set a plan in motion to copy every single book in the library, and he knows for a fact he gave that mission to Edna. But he hasn't been able to find a single trace of her. There's no way she would have broken her oath and just vanished for 2 decades. Especially not her. She was always so meticulous and fiercely dedicated. Oscar hardened his resolve he was going to find her. It's time to hunt down some advanced magic to accelerate his progress. With the potions business humming along, Oscar figures he'll have plenty of free time and approaches a woman for assistance. She's the librarian, and Oscar needs to know if she has any records about dragons from the last 20 years. The librarian nodded and beckoned for the boy to follow her. A sliver of hope ignited in Oscar. He thought that maybe, just maybe, the White Tower had managed to collect this intel. But then the woman started pulling out a few books, and a sense of dread crept over our boy, because they looked like picture books. When she handed over the copies, his fears were confirmed. They were straight-up children's stories. Getting more anxious, Oscar asked if their information was really limited to stuff like this. The librarian explained that for more detailed info, he'd have to visit the capital's library. She did mention there was a dragon who fought for humanity. Our boy's heart skipped a beat as he asked if she meant Edna, and the librarian confirmed it. She was the companion of the great hero Oscar. Apparently, she returned to her own kind after the war ended. There's been no word from her since the war wrapped up, but our protagonist is certain something is wrong. Edna was deeply disappointed with her own people. After thinking it through for a moment, our protagonist knew he'd have to figure out another way to track her down. The next day, Fidelina declared that all their external assignments were complete. Maxim was overwhelmed with emotion. Just a few days ago, they were teetering on the edge of total bankruptcy. A wave of euphoria swept through the room. Gandalf declared they needed to prepare, so they would never face a crisis like that again. He also found out the students are as loyal as they've ever been. Gandalf wants to repay that devotion, but they still have the massive problem of recovering the advanced magic they've lost over the years. He kicked himself for not learning more when he was younger. Fidelina told him not to beat himself up over it. There are methods for a person to acquire advanced magic. The issue is, only the Tower Master has access to the complete archive. And when Sasha took charge, there were only 6 spells left. 20 years ago, that number was astronomically higher. 64 spells, every single one of them unique. Gandalf asked if Captain Chester had any plans to return soon. Maxim replied that he has no intention of coming back, until he finally wraps up his last mission. If he were around, he could be teaching them some seriously advanced magic. But they had to switch gears to the next pressing issue. Fidelina dropped the bomb. A mage killer had just surfaced in the northern region. Totally freaked out by this news, she proposed an immediate curfew starting at 10 p.m. sharp. Maxim's face went white, his concern spiking when he remembered our protagonist had already bounced, telling everyone he was making a run for Baron. On the edge of panic, Fidelina insisted he had to be brought back immediately, but the kid had dipped at sunset and was probably miles away by now. Gandalf cut in, ordering them to contact the Baron branch on the double. Our boy needed to be found and returned the second he was spotted. Sure, he's got talent, but he's still a level 3 mage and needs to be protected. While they're all spiraling, our boy is just soaking in the sights of the sprawling city. 30 years ago, this entire place was nothing but rubble, but it looks like some casino-running corporation swooped in and rebuilt everything. Our boy is just trying to get his bearings, completely oblivious to the fact he's being stalked, until a shadowy figure calls out to him, announcing that he'd been waiting. And this dude rocking a sick face tattoo somehow already knows our protagonist's name. Our boy cautiously asks if he's got the right person, and the tattooed man confirms someone is looking for him. Oscar's mind immediately leaped to the Blue Tower, since those guys are definitely thirsty for revenge. Scanning the man's mana, he clocks him as at least a level 4. Our protagonist then asks, what would happen if he just decided not to go with him? The tattooed man deadpanned that he'd be taken by force. In that moment, Oscar knew he was out of options. The showdown ignited between them. Our boy scrambled to defend himself with a wind barrier, but it was instantly shattered by a single brutal kick. Blasted backwards, Oscar was left completely exposed. The tattooed man actually looked surprised he'd managed to block the hit at all. Our boy is reeling. His shield was obliterated by a simple kick with 0 mana behind it. If he's not careful in this fight, he's going to get absolutely wrecked. Thinking fast, Oscar punts a nearby can, sending it flying right at the mysterious man's face. But plot twist, the thing explodes on impact. The flash was enough to throw him off balance, and to make things crazier, the explosion was insanely powerful. The mysterious man slams into the ground, giving our protagonist the perfect opening to snatch him up by the shirt. Our boy is now primed for a judo throw. He smashes the man's body into the pavement, like a bag of literal garbage. Right after the throw, Oscar creates some distance, knowing he actually held back on that one. Pushing himself up from the concrete, the tattooed man admits our boy is strong. That's why he's got to start fighting a little more seriously. Our protagonist scoffs that this guy is arrogant. He couldn't even get the words out before his enemy was already surging toward him. The speed was so insane it looked like magical acceleration, and it was, but our boy never even saw him cast the spell. Oscar throws his hands up to defend, but the blow smashes right through his guard. Our boy's body is launched like a cannonball into the nearest wall. He slumps to the ground, gasping for air as his enemy closes in. A hit like that should have knocked him out cold, but our protagonist growls that he barely felt a thing. Absolutely furious, the tattooed man vows to end it with the next strike, and Oscar is just waiting for it. He might not be able to track him with his eyes, but he would never forget how to feel the flow of mana. This is his ultimate martial technique, the first stage, and he's about to unleash it on his opponent. The tattooed man starts to wonder, why in the world our boy just punched thin air? He must be out of his mind. But a second later, he feels a searing regret explode in his chest. The poor guy starts spitting up blood. He's sent flying backwards into the nearest wall landing, with a perfect dunk inside a trash can. The assassin is coughing violently. Oscar warns him not to move, or his organs might just rupture. The assassin demands to know what that technique was. Our boy explains that it uses resonance. That huge wind barrier he made earlier created a frequency that synced up with the enemy's body. The vibration gets amplified, directly wrecking his internal organs. It was like using a shotgun to kill a fly. Understanding absolutely nothing, the assassin just asks how the kid got so insanely strong. Oscar finds the comment weird, almost as if they'd fought before, and the assassin says they have multiple times, usually back in the White Tower's gym. Our protagonist is still trying to process this. Only then does he decide to ask who was looking for him, and the assassin reveals it was Gandalf himself. And now a wave of dread washes over our protagonist. This guy isn't an assassin. He was sent to rescue him, because a real honest-to-God assassin is on the loose in the area. Oscar regrets everything, saying the guy should have just explained all this from the beginning. And by all accounts, he did try to talk, but our boy remembers his exact words, that he would take him by force. And it finally clicks. This dude is a complete idiot. Communication is definitely not his strong suit. To make it all worse, that blunt way of talking is incredibly familiar. He asks for the young man's name, and learns he is Killian Rockwood, a proud warrior of the forest. Now our protagonist is completely stunned. He asks if the man knew someone named Radan, and he says yes, because that is his proud father. Not only that, he was a great companion of the legendary Oscar. Radan was from the Forest Tribe, a level 8 mage from the White Tower, who was a god-tier martial artist, known far and wide as the White Lion, and a close friend of the protagonist. But when he first arrived at the White Tower, it turns out his people skills were an absolute train wreck, and now our hero has just laid out the son of a close family friend. After patching the guy up, our boy was completely gutted, but Killian just stares at him, totally clueless about why he's so torn up. Oscar swears he had solid reasons for the beatdown, and the warrior claims the pain is nothing, since he's a hardened warrior of the wilds. The real issue, though, is that he's got a critical mission to pull off, and with his body this busted, he's got zero chance of succeeding. But he isn't saying this to get a pity party from Oscar. Our boy has to bail him out because ditching the mission comes with a ridiculously massive fine. The guilt slams into our protagonist like a freight train. He never wanted to screw the kid over. With a grimace, Killian points him toward his destination, the Voice of Paradise. His objective play, bodyguard for this woman at the ritzy Grand Baron Hotel. A moment later, Oscar is knocking on a suite door. He announces himself as Killian from the White Tower. Marin's manager cracks open the door, surprised that he looks nothing like the rumors described. Oscar figures it's probably the sharp suit he's wearing. Marin calls out asking if it's room service, but her manager tells her to get ready pronto. Her protection had just shown up. The girl moves to greet our hero, and he is instantly captivated. Oscar introduces himself as a level 4 mage from the White Tower, and casually asks for a glass of water. Marin gives him a grateful look for taking the gig on such short notice, and mentions she's heard his success rate is a solid 80%. Our boy's mind flashes back to the briefing Killian gave him. She's a world-famous singer, gifted with a voice so rare it's practically mythical. Cutting straight to the chase, Marin asks if he's the kind of guy she can actually rely on. He gives her a firm yes. He's thinking Killian must take after his father, a man known for his unwavering loyalty. The singer lets out a breath of relief, admitting she's a big fan of responsible people. Our protagonist thought that was a pretty random thing to say. Now it was time to get the full mission debrief. The job is to shut down any and all assassination attempts. Apparently, Marin's been bombarded with threats warning her to cancel her performance in the city. Oscar immediately asks if they have a suspect. The threats are pouring in from a rival singer who debuted 2 years before Marin. When Oscar questions why they haven't involved the authorities, he learns that things are way more complicated than that. The manager leans in, asking if he knows about the scandal with the mayor a few months back. The rival Ara Sweet just so happens to be the only daughter of the city's incoming mayor, and this whole place is drowning in corruption. Nobody is willing to lift a finger to help them. Since they can't count on the city for protection, they're forced to handle things themselves. Suddenly, it all makes sense to our protagonist. He presses further, asking what Ara gains if the show gets cancelled, considering the public backlash could be massive. Marin explains that her concert is set to happen at the legendary Baron Dome. Oscar asks what the big deal is with that place. The girl reveals that the venue holds up to 100,000 people, and anyone who headlines a show there earns a private performance for the Emperor himself during the New Year's festival. You have to claw your way through countless trials just to get a spot on that stage. It's one of the most prestigious venues in the world, a gig that could skyrocket Marin's career into the stratosphere. Our boy then asks how many other guards she hired. He needs to coordinate a strategy, but his jaw just about hits the floor when he finds out he's it. He's the only one. Turns out not a single mercenary in the entire city was willing to touch this job. Our hero realizes this mission is a total nightmare. He has to protect a massive crowd. He asks her about the cancellation fee, hinting that maybe this contract was a bad idea, but her entire demeanor instantly turns to ice. Calling our protagonist a complete jerk, she declares she will never cancel this show as it's been her single-minded focus for the last 3 years. And it's only then that our protagonist learns the payout for this job, a cool 1 million coins. Fuming, Marin spits that she thought she was dealing with a professional. Ripping off her own wig, she says she's completely losing her cool. But that's when our protagonist notices something odd. Her ears are pointed. This girl is a mermaid, a species known for their stunning beauty and enchanting voices despite having the lower body of a fish. They can shift their form to appear human, but they can't hold it for very long. Marin snaps, asking if this is his first time laying eyes on a mermaid. And now the random bathtub sitting in the middle of her hotel suite makes perfect sense. He thought they would literally waste away if they were separated from the ocean for too long, but the manager explains that Marin is a hybrid. Oscar is completely stunned by the revelation. Because of their legendary beauty, it's common for mermaids to be forced into strategic marriages. The tragic part is, if they live too far from the sea, they develop a fatal illness born of longing, dying young, and leaving their children behind. And hybrids are treated like outcasts in both worlds. Our protagonist finally understands why she was so desperate to launch her singing career at such a young age. But then he finds out her parents are actually still alive and share a genuinely happy marriage. Oscar can't help but feel a little relieved for her. He hardens his expression, though. His client could actually be killed, and her entire audience is being put at risk. Marin insists the crowd will be safe. A powerful artifact is in place to protect them, and as for herself, she's more than willing to take that chance. A fact that is clearly giving her manager a panic attack. But this performance has been her entire life's ambition for the past 3 years. Oscar cuts straight to the point, asking why she's so laser-focused on this single event. Her confident mask crumbles, revealing the truth. It all started 4 years ago, the day her father was diagnosed with an incurable sorrow. The doctors delivered a death sentence. He had 5 years to live at most. Now, only 1 year remains on that terrifying clock. But there's a sliver of hope, an ancient artifact believed to be the only thing that can cure his affliction. She is racing against time to get her hands on it, which is why backing out of this performance is unthinkable. A successful show for the Emperor means earning a single precious drop of this life-saving elixir. And just like that, it all clicks into place for our protagonist. Her fierce, unwavering determination suddenly makes perfect sense. Oscar finds himself genuinely impressed by her resolve, marveling at the profound influence parents can have over their children. As an orphan who clawed his way up from the streets, our boy has zero experience with that kind of bond. But he knows what it's like to have a master, a father figure. The idea of risking everything to save that person, that's a mission he understands down to his very core. Show me the stage, Oscar declares his decision made. It was officially go time. Marin needed to run through her rehearsal on stage. Meanwhile, our boy had his own prep to do a full security sweep of the audience and venue. If things didn't stack up to his impossible standards, she'd have to be ready to walk, no regrets. Even knowing the insane risk to her life, Oscar committed to the job. Across the city in a lavish estate, her rival seethes when she learns the show hasn't been cancelled after all. This leaves only one path forward, a path that conveniently works perfectly for her wicked plans. But then her lackey scurries in with some piping hot gossip. Marin was spotted leaving the hotel with a mysterious man. Ara immediately jumps to the conclusion that he's a secret lover, but the rumor is he's a bodyguard. With every known mercenary in the city blacklisted, she's baffled as to how her rival snagged someone competent. Get me all the information on this man, she commands. Back at the venue, our boy is a ghost, his eyes dissecting every rafter and exit, analyzing the arena's defenses. After completing his tactical assessment of the venue, our protagonist gives the green light to proceed. The contract could finally be formalized. The news sends a wave of pure relief through the singer. Marin asks if he needs anything else, but our boy coolly assures her he's already seen everything he needed to. Overcome with joy, the girl embraces her newfound sense of security. She's a completely transformed person from the furious, cornered woman she was just moments ago. Our boy is about to earn every cent of his pay, as his hyper-aware senses immediately pick up on two shady figures lurking in the wings. With a movement too fast to see, he unleashes his signature wind bullet, striking both targets with silent precision. Their bodies now lay crumpled on the floor, a permanent part of the backstage decor. Our boy decides not to mention the incident. No need to rattle his client's nerves. Word gets back to Ara that her two agents were not just defeated, they're now fertilizing the daisies. She realizes her rival hired a true professional. She demands to know how her assassins were taken out. The report is chilling. There was no sign of a fight, just a single clean hole drilled through each of their foreheads. Ara explodes with rage at the news. "Get the car ready now," she snarls at her sycophant. "I need to meet this bodyguard myself." She already knows exactly what her next move is. She's going to poach him. Later at the hotel, Marin naively assumes our protagonist has never experienced fine dining like this. He, however, is still reeling from her wild personality swing. "Stay sharp," he warns in a low voice. "The room was bugged," he reveals. "I took care of it." Marin's face pales, then floods with relief. Thinking she's finally in a safe space, her bubbly persona returns full force as she asks if our boy is enjoying the lavish spread. "It's excellent," he replies calmly. "I had it often during the war." His casual comment leaves Marin stunned. The rumors were true, she thought. The White Tower must have been a truly impoverished place. Composing herself, Marin politely thanks the waiter for their meal. Just then, a venomously sweet voice slices through the room's ambiance. Ara emerges from the shadows, a smug smirk playing on her lips. "Don't thank him," she says to her rival. "I pay." With the table loaded with food, Marin grilled the waiter about the so-called private room. He stammered, claiming the intruder approached him like an old pal, insisting on a quick chat with the idol. He nervously told them to enjoy the company and bailed. Our boy immediately clocked the vibe. This intruder runs this city. Marin signaled the crew to bounce, but Ara blocked the path, ordering the bodyguard to stay put. Marin instantly knew the score. Her rival was making a power play to poach her defender. Ara skipped the small talk, demanding he shred his current contract to work for her, sweetening the pot with a promise of 10 times the pay. Marin scoffed, claiming her guard was loyal. But our boy flipped the script, replying that 10 times the cash is a proposal he can't ignore. The singer's heart dropped into her stomach. He starts doing the math aloud. Since his current tag is $1 million, a $10 million fee is looking pretty juicy. The rival shrugged it off like pocket change. But wait, add the breach of contract penalty, and she's looking at a total of $100 million. He smirked, asking if she's got that kind of liquidity. Ara thought he was trolling, but our protagonist's eyes were dead serious. That triggered the diva. She snatched off her shades, demanding his identity. Our boy simply dropped his name, Killian. As she stormed out, she faked a smile, hoping their paths cross again. She figured he was a rookie for leaking his real name, and our boy echoed the sentiment. But the second the door clicked shut behind her, that mask crumbled into pure, unadulterated venom. The jealous diva's lackey asked if she was good. Spoiler alert, she was absolutely not good. "It's time to call in the hit squad." But a voice from the shadows cut in, "No need for calls." Enter Wu Jin, who's been stalking the target like a phantom. Ara demanded to know how he breached security. He flashed a keycard courtesy of his employer, and dropped the intel that his brother is already en route. The playbook just got a rewrite. Originally, the plan was to ice the manager right before the curtain rose, to shatter Marin's mental state and kill the performance. But now the hit list has a new name. The bodyguard has to go, and the jealous rival demanded he suffer. The assassin vowed to infiltrate the venue the next day and prep the kill zone. Ara demanded every gruesome detail and offered any resources he needed. She's seething. Nobody disrespects her on her own turf. She's ready to burn it all down to soothe her bruised ego. But here's the kicker. Our protagonist heard every word. He'd slickly planted a monobug on her during their little chat. He's actually shocked the assassin was too amateur to notice it. Standing up, he declared it's time to head back. They need sleep, but Marin needs answers. She confronted him about entertaining the rival's offer. Our boy looked her in the eye. Does she really think he took this gig? Just for the paycheck? She nodded. He countered, reminding her that she's fighting to save her father, and he's invested in that dream. He dropped some lore in his past life. He never had that chance. His biggest ghost was failing to save his own master. Seeing her grit, he refused to let her carry that same heavy regret. Marin was visibly moved by his loyalty, thanking our protagonist for having her back. Fast forward to showtime. The crew is hustling, but danger is lurking in the bathroom stall. It's the assassin primed and ready, staring at Killian's photo. He'd been camping in that stall all day, just waiting for his partner. If the payout wasn't 5 million, he wouldn't be caught dead doing this. He knows his ally is disguised in staff gear, but just as he's strategizing, reality takes a wild turn. Our protagonist walks in to wash his hands in the exact same bathroom. Talk about a free kill. The assassin debated rushing him right there, but he hesitated. Killian is a White Tower mage and a martial arts beast. Better to wait for the 2v1 advantage and stick to the script. But before Killian exited, he dropped a bomb, pointing out, "The guy in the stall has calluses on his fingers but smooth palms, classic sign of a hidden weapons user." He casually asked if the guy kills people for a living. The assassin froze. Cover completely blown. Panic set in, he needed to bolt. But that hesitation was fatal. Our protagonist took the silence as a confession and launched a preemptive strike. The assassin, unsure if he could even bail, decided to brawl. He took a mana-infused hit that wrecked his arm, but adrenaline took over. He managed to corner our protagonist. No room to dodge. He unleashed a storm of poisoned needles. Our protagonist collapsed, totally paralyzed. The assassin grinned, mission accomplished. He wasn't sure at first, but clearly he's dealing with a rookie. Time to wrap it up. He leveled a knife at our boy's throat, but suddenly he couldn't move either. An invisible wall stopped the blade inches from skin. Realization hit him like a truck. A wind barrier had coated the body. Not a single poison needle had actually connected. Our protagonist snapped out of the act, leveling his revolver at the scumbag. The assassin was defenseless. His brain couldn't process the counterplay. There's no learning curve for that kind of dominance. Gray matter paints the wall a gruesome masterpiece. The clock is ticking down. 60 seconds until showtime. The arena plunges into darkness. Suddenly spotlights blaze as Marin storms the stage, greeted by a deafening roar. Backstage, the second hitman is sweating bullets. His partner is ghosting him. Then footsteps echo in the corridor. He sighs in relief, assuming it's his tardy teammate. But the rhythm is off the steps, breeze right past the rendezvous point. That's a red flag. He rips the door open, ready to chew his partner out, but freezes. He's staring down the barrel of our protagonist's icy glare. The hunter becomes the hunted. The killer realizes the terrifying truth: this intruder mimicked his brother's gait perfectly to lure him out. Child's play for our hero. He drops the bombshell casually. "Your friend, I turned his head into pink mist a few rooms back." Surprisingly, the assassin exhales. Instant death means no torture. Our boy tilts his head. This guy is way too chill about his partner getting deleted. Just hazards of the trade. This gig was supposed to be their swan song before getting drafted into the big leagues. A massive syndicate was waiting for them. Seeing our boy's White Tower affiliation, the killer sneers, thinking he's dealing with a third-rate amateur. Time to educate the rookie. He unleashes his aura, a suffocating, toxic energy. No hidden blades this time. This is pure, lethal magic. Unlike the other guy, this one is the real deal. He weaves his mana into a dense obsidian fog that coalesces into a deadly black cloud. The shadow strikes from the blind spot. Our hero's eyes widen, and he twists his body midair, barely evading the tendril of death. One touch equals game over, instant necrosis. Our boy knows the stakes, but he doesn't flinch. He's got a plan. The killer frowns. Immune hardly. Our protagonist smirks, revealing a skin-tight mana film sealing him off from the toxic atmosphere. "You'll choke to death," the assassin mocks. Wrong. Our boy is synthesizing oxygen within the barrier. That is god-tier magic tower sorcery. The killer's grin vanishes. His partner didn't die by luck. This kid is a legitimate monster. Mana-enhanced vision active. Our hero dances through the barrage, reading every trajectory. The assassin is shook, he can't land a single scratch. Offense time. Our boy aims for a headshot to close the deal, but the shadow mana moves on its own, intercepting the attack. Snatching the bullet out of the air, our protagonist blinks. The projectile didn't just stop. The toxic aura dissolved it into slag. Gap closed. The killer seizes our boy by the collar, eyes burning with vengeance. It is payback time for his fallen brother. A brutal kick to the gut sends our hero flying. He crashes through the glass, plummeting toward the pavement like a bag of bricks. That impact wasn't pretty. He hits the ground hard, writhing in pain. Gravity is a cruel mistress. The killer lands gracefully, stalking his prey. Above, the concert rages on, oblivious to the duel. Our boy's arm is snapped, bad news. Victor stands over victim. But our hero isn't done. He raises his good arm and unloads the clip. Useless. The corrosive aura eats the bullets and liquefies the gun barrel. The assassin has total dominance now. He raises his hand for the execution. Goodbye, hero. Suddenly, boom, fireworks erupt overhead, shaking the sky. The trap springs. The client followed the script perfectly. A swirling wind barrier instantly locks the assassin in place. And it is catastrophic. The acoustic pressure inside that bubble is tearing him apart. He is reeling from the sonic blast. Organs rupturing from the vibration. Our protagonist nods respectfully. The guy was a pro, but physics wins. He harnessed the roar of thousands of screaming fans to create a sonic pressure cooker. Absolute genius. The killer tries one last desperate lunge, but his equilibrium is shot. He is stumbling. Game, set, match. Our boy fires a compressed wind bullet. It blasts through the villain's chest, turning him into organic waste before he hits the dirt. Collapsed on the asphalt, our hero finally exhales. Flashback to yesterday, the briefing. He gave Marin strict orders. When you hear two pops, trigger the pyrotechnics immediately and make that crowd scream. That sonic energy was his ace in the hole. Mission accomplished. Oscar watches the colors bloom in the night sky. Not bad for a rookie mercenary. Cut to 3 days later. Marin is frantic. You can't leave like this. She even hired a healer priest. Oscar waves it off. I am good, really. She is not buying it. She saw him half dead in the alley. But business is business. It is payday. A cool extra 100,000 gold lands in his lap. A gratitude tip for saving her life. Oscar stays humble. Couldn't have done it without your timing. Marin asks if he is sticking around since she is skipping town today. She drops a warning. Watch your back. That jealous witch holds a grudge. Then the million-dollar question. What is your real name? Oscar tenses up. That is dangerous info. He tries to pivot the conversation. She calls his bluff. I see the colored contacts, kid. Caught. Oscar counters. If you knew I was faking, why hire me? Marin smiles softly. The way you looked when you mentioned your dad. It was like looking in a mirror. She rolled the dice on a suicide mission, totally ignoring the odds. Oscar shook his head, muttering, that girl has zero survival instincts. But then he dropped the bomb. His real name is Oscar. The manager's jaw hit the floor. He was staring at the White Tower's legendary genius, the mastermind behind the vaccine. The singer's eyes widened as the headlines clicked into place. She whispered, he looks way too basic to be a genius. Our boy didn't miss a beat firing back. Well, without the glam, you don't exactly scream superstar either. But he admitted it under those stage lights. She's a titan. Marin smirked. Our hero certainly has a way with words. Her vibe softened as she thanked him, admitting he was hands down the best bodyguard she'd ever hired. They sealed the victory with a firm handshake. Meanwhile, across the city, a shadowy figure arrived at a hotel suite with intel to spill. A mixed bag of good and bad news. The woman waiting for him wasn't just listening. She was analyzing the topic. Those two missing prodigies, who were ghosting them. Spoiler alert, neither is breathing anymore. The untalented brother, deleted. That was the good news. The bad news. The genius younger brother met the same grim fate. The woman's aura flared with rage. Rumor on the street was that her own acquaintance, Killian Rockwood, pulled the trigger. The accusation hit her like a truck. Then the messenger slid a photo of our protagonist across the table. Her eyes narrowed. She didn't recognize this guy at all. There's no way her brother's face morphed that drastically. Even with years apart, she pushed the photo back, her voice ice cold. She needed to know exactly who was running around wearing her little brother's identity. Her name is Kaya Rockwood, and the hunt is on. Meanwhile, drama is brewing at the sweet estate home of that obsession-crazed girl. They got wind that the Hoover family is dropping cash on mercenaries. The family patriarch just waved it off. He couldn't care less about the former mayor's crumbling legacy. 2 years in office and zero clout, he scoffed. They couldn't even keep their own leader breathing. The mustachioed villain snapped at his butler for even bringing it up. He's only interested in that family's classified vault, noting that the late son was just a puppet. In 48 hours, he's planning something massive. But right now, he wants answers. About the punk who upset his daughter. The report linked Killian the White Tower mage and Marin the singer. He decided to give the girl a pass, since she's on the Emperor's radar now. But as for the boy, he's going to be surveilled, hunted, and erased. Poor protagonist has no clue that both the Assassin Guild leader and a corrupt noble are plotting his downfall. Oblivious to the crosshairs, our boy was just chilling, grabbing coffee with Killian. After devouring a meal, Killian gave props to our protagonist for the save. He looked much better, finally healing up from that brutal beatdown. When it came to the payout, Killian insisted our boy keep it all. You did the heavy lifting, you keep the loot. Killian asked if our boy was heading back to the White Tower. Oscar raised an eyebrow. You planning to drag me back in handcuffs? Killian laughed. Not my style. He'd already told Gandalf to chill. The kid is skilled enough to roam free. Oscar revealed his next stop, the Blood Tower. He's got a meeting to crash. He also warned Killian to watch his back, since that last gig put a massive target on his head. Killian nodded, realizing it was time to go off the grid. His next contract was a $500,000 extraction job, but honestly, no amount of cash is worth the heat he's facing right now. Since they were both headed toward the White Tower, eventually our protagonist suggested they team up. Killian paused, finding the friendly vibe kinda sus. Still traveling with a powerhouse like Oscar wasn't a bad play. Besides, Killian had his own mission in the city, hunting down the worst traitor the Forest Tribe had ever known. Intel placed the rat right here, in these streets. Classified tribal business, Killian shrugged, keeping the details vague. Our boy wished him luck, saying, catch you at the White Tower. Then Oscar threw up a traditional tribal hand sign. Killian froze. How do you know that Oscar quickly improvised a lie? Realizing his past life knowledge was leaking out, but the result was pure gold. Killian smiled and returned the gesture with respect. As he navigated the city streets, our protagonist weighed the risks. Marching into the Blood Tower wasn't exactly a walk in the park. He figured Edna was laying low. The Blood Tower can track anyone, but Edna isn't just anyone, she's a dragon in hiding. Suddenly, his radar pinged. Level 7 energy signature. Massive power. He scanned the crowd and locked eyes with a woman staring right at him, sending a jolt of confusion through him. A stream of traffic cut his line of sight, blocking her for a split second. When the cars cleared, she was gone. Vanished. Oscar stood there, totally baffled. Beside the invisible woman, a minion whispered, "You're being too soft, just because he's your brother's friend. We should crush him for what he did to our recruit," the minion hissed. The woman didn't blink. Irrelevant. Actually, she was impressed. She wanted to give the kid a medal for taking out 2 pieces of trash while only being a level 3 mage. But something else was nagging at her. She turned to her subordinate. "If I fully erased my presence, could you spot me?" The minion shook his head. "Impossible, ma'am." "Exactly," she murmured. "So how did a level 3 mage look me dead in the eye?" Kaya felt a cold chill. This kid was dangerous. She locked eyes with our boy, and the vibe instantly shifted. He wasn't guessing. He was operating with surgical precision. She just had to ask for his name one last time. "So this is the legendary genius from the White Tower." A smirk played on her lips. She is absolutely living for this, and can't wait to see what kind of chaos he unleashes next. Cut to the destination, the city's infamous Blood Tower. Our protagonist stepped into the shop, the air thick with tension, as the clerk asked what business brought him there. Oscar didn't beat around the bush, he's hunting someone down. The girl asked if he brought a catalyst, specifically blood. Our boy nodded, and she gestured toward the back room. Our boy stepped into the private chamber. It was time to brew some magic. He needed to synthesize a blood sample using an artificial formula, but there was a twist. He could mimic dragon's blood perfectly. All it took was a little touch of his own high-tier sorcery. That should provide enough magical resonance to track her down. He was about to load the sample into the tracking device when the clerk stopped him cold. "Hold up. You need to declare your intent and drop the cash first." Our boy froze. "Since when?" "Back in the day, he ran these searches on the house. Apparently, the system has introduced some very specific paywalls." Oscar demanded the premium tier search casually, mentioning that this used to be a free service. The girl looked at him like he was crazy. "Wrong. It was never free." Oscar tried to flex, claiming he heard it from the White Tower's former master. The room temperature dropped. Her voice went deadly serious. "You with them?" she asked, eyes narrowing even though he wasn't wearing the robes. Oscar played dumb immediately. "Who? Never heard of him." Terrible liar, but it worked. The girl exhaled relieved. "Good, because we charge White Tower mages a 30% nuisance tax." Turns out their former master spammed the service over 100 times and ghosted on the bill every single time. Nearly bankrupted the Blood Tower. The great Oscar wasn't just a hero. He was a financial nightmare. He honestly had no clue his free trials had caused that much wreckage. If the royal family hadn't stepped in with a massive bailout, this place would be dust. There used to be a VIP perk for Tower Masters, but our protagonist abused the system so hard they permanently revoked the privilege for everyone. Talk about ruining it for the squad. Oscar asked for the damage. She dropped the number 500,000 coins. His jaw hit the floor. That is an insane amount of money. He tried to haggle 100,000 now, 400,000 later. She shrugged. "Sure, but 0 refunds. And you don't get the data until the balance is 0. He has to sign a binding contract, and the results take 1 to 3 days to buffer." Our boy signed the paper, his brain still reeling from the debt lore he just learned. He headed straight for Killian, who opened the door looking stressed, wondering why our protagonist was darkening his doorstep. Oscar didn't waste time. "Tell me about the 500,000 coin job." He's all in. Cut to the Hoover family estate. Our protagonist is ready to secure the bag. The Hoovers are desperate to fill this position, but the skill ceiling is so high that nobody has been able to qualify. Killian broke down the intel. It revolves the city's former mayor. The guy had a vision to completely flip the script on this town. On the surface, the city looks bougie, but the underbelly is rotting with gambling dens and addicts, and the institutions are totally compromised. That vice brings cash into the city, but the former mayor declared war on it. And his crackdown on the drug trade, an absolute masterclass. In just 2 years, he cratered the illegal market by 86%. But the second he hit that milestone, the mayor turned up dead. That is way too sus to be a coincidence. Definitely retaliation, but nobody has been able to prove it or find the culprit. The key to the truth is locked inside a magically encrypted document. The mayor cast the spell himself, and it's holding all the secrets. Crack the file, find the killer. Our protagonist had a hunch the Sweet family was behind the hit. But plot twist, it's the total opposite. Mustache, the head of the Sweet clan, was actually besties with the former mayor. He backed the anti-drug crusade 100%. That's why he's the frontrunner now. The public loves him. Oscar was shook. That delinquent kid's dad is actually a saint. Suddenly, footsteps echoed outside the room. A kid peeked in, asking if they were the wizards from the White Tower. "This is Jake, the eldest son." Our protagonist introduced himself, then Killian stepped up. The kid's eyes went wide. He realized this was Marin's legendary bodyguard. Jake is totally starstruck by the guy who clapped those famous bandits. In his eyes, Killian is the main character. The kid can't hide his hype, while Killian is standing there, sweating, embarrassed to be taking credit for feats he didn't actually do. Our protagonist cut through the fanboy moment. Let's talk about the data. Jake confirmed what his father said. There is explosive intel inside that file, but it's on lockdown. Oscar looked the kid in the eye and asked the hard question. You think this killed your dad? Jake didn't hesitate. Yes, he's convinced of it. Now Oscar is actually intrigued. The kid dropped another bombshell after his dad died. He hired tons of experts to decrypt the file. But every single one of them met with a freak accident on the way to the city, falling off horses, vehicles spontaneously combusting. Not a single decoder made it to the city alive. Someone is actively intercepting them. Oscar nodded. This isn't bad luck. It's a hit squad. The boy said he needs to run a protocol on the mages, first unrolling a scroll stamped by the Order of Earth. He figured mages would know the drill. Oscar recognized it instantly. That is a soul geese, rare, brutal, and unbreakable. Break the contract and you die. Rule number 1, the hired help keeps their mouth shut. 0 leaks allowed unless Jake gives the green light. The kid is dead serious about this. Before ink hits paper, Oscar pauses. He needs to know, did every single person in this room swear the same blood oath? Jake nods, yes. He dropped a fortune on security, so he thinks they're solid. But our MC, he trusts nothing but his own eyes. Oscar demands to audit the guards' packs. Immediately some grunt gets salty, sneering at what he thinks is just a weak level 3 mage. Big mistake. Instantly they freeze. Oscar flexes his wind magic, crushing them with an invisible weight that feels like the aura of a top-tier monster. The pressure lifts, leaving them shook. Oscar asks again, cool as ice. Jake catches the vibe instantly. He tells his crew to chill and rings a service bell. Time to audit. As the contracts pile up, Oscar scans them with laser focus. He calls out 2 names, Toon and Coat. One guy plays dumb, why me, before a blast of wind slams him backward. Jake watches heart pounding, totally lost. Oscar demands to know who delivered this specific pact. Lock that courier up, he orders. Because this contract is a fugazi. It's just regular paper. 0 divine energy. 0 binding. To prove it, he shreds the document effortlessly, something impossible for a real magical pact. The conclusion, these two have definitely been spilling secrets. Cornered, the bald traitor lunges at Oscar. Bad move. Killian isn't standing there just to look pretty. He shuts down the attack instantly, grabbing the guy and grinding his shiny head into the floor tiles. The traitor starts pleading ignorance. Killian demands a name. Oscar knows the intel is already out there. He just needs to know who bought it. The guy cracks. He doesn't have a name, but he knows a massive squad of mercenaries has been hired to hit this location. Oscar connects the dots. The enemy is coming for the intel, and they're bringing an army. But panic isn't on the menu. Oscar counters 500 grand to crack the code, and another 500 grand for him and Killian to provide elite protection. Jake loves the hustle and is ready to sign immediately. The goods are stashed in a secure vault. Oscar mentions he has a hideout too, and Jake's eyes light up. Game recognizes game. Impressed by Oscar's paranoia, Jake finally opens the secret passage. He's never shown this to a soul before. Inside sits the target case. Oscar activates his monovision, eyes glowing as he scans the object. He spots 3 distinct magical triggers. Force this thing open, and the whole room goes boom. Jake pales. He had no idea. Can you handle it? Oscar smirks. Piece of cake. After surviving the war, this is basically child's play. Click. The case pops open instantly, leaving the kid stunned. He didn't expect speed like that. Jake grabs the documents, trembling as the weight of the moment hits him. Most of it is standard dirt on corrupt politicians, nothing new in a rotten city like this. This isn't enough to get a mayor assassinated. Oscar watches the 10-year-old work, reminded of his old disciple, Lloyd. Kids forced to grow up too fast. Oscar steps in to help. Let's dig into that diary. Oscar taps a specific entry. Read this. Jake hesitates, confused but nervous energy takes over as he focuses on the page. He flips to June 10th. The entry marks 2 years into his father's term as mayor. Flashback. The mayor cleaned up Baran, turning a vice city into a beacon of hope. July 2nd, something was wrong. Despite the raids, the streets were still flooded with drugs. He grilled every dealer he caught. Nothing. Just low-level pawns. Desperate, the mayor decided to confide in his trusted partner, Mark. But the chat felt off. Mark wasn't surprised. It was like Mark was one step ahead. Jake freezes, eyes widening in horror. Kid Oscar asks, seeing the color drain from Jake's face. I can take over, if it's too much. September 1st, the smoking gun. Mark wasn't just a partner, he was a cartel executive. Jake's hands shake with pure rage. He turns to the 18th, the day the mayor planned to drop the hammer and expose the whole organization. Panic sets in. September 18th isn't just a date, it's the day his father was murdered. Flashback to the funeral. Standing in the pouring rain crying while Mark hugged him. comforted him. The man who held him while he wept was the monster who ordered the hit. Back in reality, Jake breaks down, sobbing in disbelief. He's a dead man, Oscar vows. Jake shakes his head. The cartel owns the city. But Oscar just puts a hand on his shoulder. Watch me. Oscar flashes his magic tower credentials, promising they'll handle it, but then drops the bomb. This mess is way uglier than they thought. Mark isn't just targeting locals. He's looking to hook tourists and turn this drug ring into a nationwide epidemic. That diary is their only leverage, and Mark is definitely coming for it. Oscar bets on a calculated strike, he'll hit them, exactly when the city's guard is down. Killian asks if there's a distraction coming up, and the kid nods grimly. Massive festival, city center, tonight. Hearing that, Killian immediately suggests they get Jake out of the kill zone and call in the heavy hitters. Oscar smirks, acting shocked that his partner actually had a stroke of logical genius for once. But the smirk vanishes instantly. Oscar shuts down the evac plan. They are standing their ground. That lights a fire under Jake. He wipes his eyes, squares his shoulders, and vows he's done running. If he bails now, his dad's death goes unavenged forever. He even offers to tear up the contract and face the danger solo if it's too much for them. Oscar looks genuinely insulted at the suggestion they'd bail. Killian steps in, reminding Jake that a deal is a deal. He hired them, and they don't break trust. The kid is practically tearing up, but Killian cuts the sentimentality he needs. A comms device stat. Jake shakes his head. Lines are dead, courtesy of Mark's blackout strategy. Killian pivots. You got a crystal ball stashed anywhere. Surprise, surprise, Jake has an antique gathering dust. Killian demands to see it, and the kid points to one sitting right there in the room. Oscar cracks a joke about how convenient that is, but Killian shushes him and grabs the orb. The second, his fingers brush the glass. It hums to life with a mystic glow. Oscar's jaw drops. How does his partner know how to operate a museum piece? Killian shrugs it off, says he learned it when he was bored. Thank God for durable, decades-old tech. The light fades. Oscar asks the big question, did it go through? Killian nods. He mutters about hoping the elders aren't late, leaving Oscar totally lost. Killian just flashes a cocky grin, confident the cavalry is on its way. Smash cut to the Crystal Ball Management Department, which is basically a dusty room full of shelves. The department head is sprawled out, yawning so hard his jaw might unhinge. His only staff member, a fresh-faced rookie, finally speaks up. The kid wants to know what the heck they actually do there, since orientation was non-existent. He's been there 3 days and has only seen his boss perfect the art of napping. The chief asks what the kid knows. Rookie gives the standard it's an honor spiel, but the chief cuts to the chase. They analyze numbers, specifically sequences that pop up on the central orb. Back in the day before smartphones and tech, this ball was the global network. People used portable units to beam unique ID numbers to locate each other. But the unit they're monitoring, that's military-grade hardware with zero bandwidth limits. The chief eyes the kid. You're a peacetime baby, right? Ever heard of encryption? He drops the lore. Those numbers combine into sentences. It's old wartime tech, a state secret tied directly to the imperial family. And only the top brass knows the cipher. Suddenly, the rookie starts screaming his boss's name in pure panic. Chief thinks he's trolling, but the kid points a trembling finger. Behind him, the dormant crystal ball is blindingly bright. Realization hits. The chief scrambles to the desk, decoding the flashes on the fly, Baron. Happy ending, cartel. He barks at the rookie to transcribe while he cracks the cipher. The message is a nightmare. The cartel is flooding the city with drugs and staging a hostile takeover tonight. The rookie freezes in terror, but the chief screams, get national security on the line now. Cut to the forest perimeter. The security feeds have been slashed. We are in the blind spot. Mercenary Captain Omar lays it out. They have a strict 5-hour window to snatch the encrypted data. But the leader of a rival squad isn't having it. He's done waiting and decides his crew is going in solo. Seeing that Jackson, another merc heavy, declares his team is moving out too, Omar stomps the dirt, furious. What was the point of assembling this massive army if nobody follows orders? You've got 10 different merc groups who have zero chemistry and massive egos. It's a powder keg. Omar's second-in-command is heating up, but Omar just sighs. He knew this would happen. The client's daughter promised a fat bonus for speed, triggering a greed race. Not wanting to lose the payday, Omar finally signals his squad to charge. Boots hit the dirt. The invasion is on. Silence hangs for a second, then crack. A blood-curdling scream rips through the night air. Omar freezes. He looks down to see his redhead scout writhing in the dirt. His ankle snapped like a twig. It's a minefield. Omar screams, trap, watch your step. But it's too late. Another merc, pale as a ghost, points into the darkness, stammering something about Jackson. The squad leader got caught lacking, dropping dead before he even hit the floor. Another agonizing scream rips through the tree line. Startled, the commander spins around only to see his guy's leg blown clean off. He realizes the hard way these mines aren't passive traps. Glowing magic circles ignite across the dirt, proving these explosives are hunting them down automatically. Panic sets in. The leader screams for everyone to book it toward the mansion. The mercs scatter like roaches, shrieking for their lives as total chaos erupts. High up in the canopy, a shadowy figure tracks their panic with glowing crimson eyes. Oscar drops from the sky, asking if they're eager to meet their maker. In a blur of motion, he blitzes forward, slicing through multiple enemies in a single heartbeat. One survivor scrambles behind a tree, traumatized by watching his squad get deleted. Shaking uncontrollably, he silently prays for the monster to just vanish. Suddenly, the slaughter goes silent, just the wind rustling the leaves. Thinking he survived, the merc spits on the ground in relief. Convinced the coast is clear, he risks a peek, determined not to end up butchered like his crew. But out of nowhere, a warm drop lands on his nose. Confused, he touches it, then slowly looks up. Oscar is perched right above him, staring down with ice-cold eyes blade ready. The mercenary loses it, screaming in pure terror. Faced with the Grim Reaper, panic takes over. He snaps his weapon up, aiming point blank at the enemy's face. He mag dumps the entire clip, screaming for the bastard to just die. But the bullets ping harmlessly off a shimmering magical barrier. Oscar calmly mentions there's one thing he absolutely loathes. The merc is stunned, he's still standing, as Oscar clarifies it's the stench of gunpowder. He hates stinking up a sacred forest. The scene cuts to black. We shift focus to Killian, perched on the mansion roof, looking absolutely drained. Turns out he's been abusing thermal vision magic, while sniping with wind bullets. He rubs his tired eyes, admitting that while the combo is deadly efficient, it burns through mana like crazy. Still, he neutralized 67 bogeys and casts a wide-range scan. Utilizing a bird's-eye view, he pinpoints his own location and spots the two allied mercs deep in the woods. The radar shows the remaining 50 hostiles retreating fast. Killian exhales, wondering if the nightmare is finally over. But then a glitch. The blips on his radar suddenly whip around and start rushing back at impossible speeds. It makes no sense why run back into the meat grinder. Killian finds their velocity suspicious. They should be gassed out by now. His gut tells him something is seriously wrong down there. Down below, Oscar notices the gunpowder stink fading, signaling the skirmish is done. Right on cue. The two mercenaries sprint over, looking hyped to see him alive. They start high-fiving, bragging that the four of them just repelled 150 enemies solo. But Oscar shuts that party down instantly. With a grim expression, he orders them to hold position. He warns them to gear up, round 2 is coming fast. The enemy wave charges in, screeching like banshees. Oscar thinks no sane person would double back for a suicide mission. He strikes one down, wondering if they're hopped up on stimulants, but he gets a nasty surprise. The guy chomps down on his arm with inhuman force. Oscar doesn't hesitate, he counters with a haymaker, literally exploding the merc's head. Watching the bodies hit the floor, he analyzes their erratic movements. One of his allies recognizes the fighting style, it's the same dark art used on the tribe chieftain. Panicking, the other merc screams out, warning that these guys aren't human anymore. Hearing this, Oscar's face drops, shook by the realization. From the darkness, red eyes flare up, and a familiar voice croons, "Long time no see." A woman steps out of the shadows. Oscar clocks her immediately, Kaya Rockwood, the tribe's infamous traitor. He calls her out, demanding to know if the rumors are true. She smirks, listening to him accuse her of stealing the king's tattoo. Oscar clenches his fist until his knuckles turn white, demanding the truth straight from her lips. Flashback time, we see Kaya back when she was the apex predator, the warrior everyone respected. She was Oscar's idol, but that pedestal is crumbling now. He can't wrap his head around why she flipped on them. It was her betrayal that drove the chief insane, leading to him getting slaughtered by his own people. The ultimate knife in the back from the one person he trusted most. Back in the present, Oscar begs her to say it's all a lie, a big misunderstanding. But she doubles down, confirming everything with zero remorse, acting like it's no big deal. Stunned by her cold-blooded attitude, he's left speechless, asking for even a single excuse. Grinning, she says she owes no one an apology. That snaps something in Oscar. He roars that the chief she corrupted died a shameful, dishonorable death. Rage boiling over his eyes ignite crimson. Oscar drops into a combat stance, asking Kaya if she's really trying to throw hands with him. She scoffs, but he reminds her a true warrior of the forest never backs down. Eyes locked and dead serious, he drops the hard truth. He wasn't raised to be some wise monk, he was forged for the battlefield. Kaya smirks, trying to get under his skin. You really gonna let your buddy die solo? Instead of answering, he launches himself straight at her throat. He knows Killian won't fold to some mindless dolls. But miles away, the vibe is totally different. One of the allies is hyperventilating in pure terror. Seeing his squadmate drop, he glances back, eyes wide with absolute horror, and starts screeching for backup. His other buddy is already dirt-napping, surrounded and pleading for mercy. It's do or die time, and the panic is taking over. For a split second, a dark thought hits him, use his friend as meat bait to bail. But then memory lane hits hard, that snapshot of his partner's kid. The promise of a family trip echoes in his head. But fear wins. He makes the selfish play and bolts to save his own neck. He's sprinting, lungs burning with guilt, leaving his homie to get snatched. But suddenly, bam, something grabs him tight. Instant regret washes over him. He should have stood his ground like a real fighter. Before he can process it, a blinding white flash nukes the entire enemy squad. Two survivors huddle behind a tree, checking if they're still breathing. Out of nowhere, Killian steps up, cool as a cucumber, asking if they're good. They start gripping about his timing, but Killian cuts to the chase. What exactly are these freak shows? One guy shudders, explaining these things don't feel pain, they just keep coming, like relentless zombies. The other mentions Oscar called the boss lady Kaya Rockwood. That name hits Killian like a truck. He knows exactly who she is. Turns out Kaya isn't just anybody, she's the daughter of Redan, the legendary powerhouse. But there's no time for history lessons. The Horde is rallying, and the mercs look to Killian for a miracle plan. Killian puts it together, that mind control. It's the signature move of the fabled King's Tattoo. We're talking about a mark reserved strictly for the Alpha, the warrior destined to lead the tribe. This artifact is so top tier that if the user dies, it warps back to the Forest Temple automatically. And that madness-inducing skill, it's ironically called Morale Boost, but it wasn't designed for this nightmare fuel. Originally, the theory was it just turned allies into fearless soldiers, not mindless drones. Seeing a holy technique twisted into something this sick makes Killian's stomach turn. He can't wrap his head around why Redan's own blood would stoop this low. Suddenly, a merc screams for Oscar as the wave crashes in. "They're infinite," the guy yells. Killian shuts him down. "Chill, I've got a way to wipe the board clean." He starts channeling blue energy flaring up around him. "Give me 30 seconds, he commands. He needs them to hold the line while he charges up. The mercs start freaking out. 2 verses. An army, no shot. But it's do or die. They dig deep, swinging wildly at everything moving. One screams Oscar's name in pure panic, while Killian stands statue still, eyes shut tight. "Hurry the hell up," the other merc screeches. Boom. The timer hits 0. Killian's blue eyes snap open, hands clapping together to unleash his ultimate move. Solitary Garden. A massive dome of shimmering light explodes outward, engulfing the entire battlefield. He calls it complete. The mercs freeze, jaws dropping as every single enemy suddenly halts mid-stride. Killian pulls his hands apart, sealing the deal. He explains he's created a mana void, a dead zone for magic. Basically, he severed the Wi-Fi connection between the puppets and the master. The mercs look clueless, they just know they're not dead. "Head back to the mansion," he orders. One guy pauses. "Wait, you're not rolling with us." He confirms he's staying put. "Not yet," Killian replies. "I've got a VIP to collect." Meanwhile, the Oscar versus Kaya brawl is getting intense. Amidst the smoke and blasts, Kaya realizes Oscar leveled up. He's faster, sharper, and fixed his rookie mistakes. Oscar isn't playing. He concentrates crimson energy into his palm, glowing with lethal intent. The mana solidifies into razor-sharp claws, looking ready to shred anything in the zip code. Wolf Song. He lands a heavy hit, slamming Kaya into the dirt. Oscar rushes in for the execution. Twist, she catches his lethal strike with her bare hand like it's nothing. "Not bad, kid," she taunts. She mocks his fighting style. "You're too predictable. Real warriors know how to lie with their fists." Suddenly, she flinches. Her connection to the puppets just snapped. Oscar looks confused. "Don't look at me. I didn't touch the switch." Oscar senses the mana spike. "Duck," he yells. A colossal pillar of light crashes down from the heavens, hitting Kaya with zero mercy. She staggers mind, racing. Was that a wind bullet? Is the White Tower involved? It has to be the same guy who jammed her signal. But how did backup get here this fast? Aside from her brother, there's only one mage in this region with that kind of firepower, a level 3 caster. Oscar doesn't waste the confusion. "Eyes on me," he shouts, lunging in. But even distracted, she manages to throw up a block. The ground splinters under the sheer force of his landing. She just laughs, telling him to quit dreaming, and asking where his little sniper friend is hiding. A wicked grin spreads across her face. "You want it that bad? Fine. I'll hunt him down myself." She ripples a magical scan through the entire forest, hunting for a single heartbeat. But then, glitch. The scan returns 0 results. She's ticking off now. While she's distracted by the void, Oscar rushes her again. She can't process it. How did he ghost her radar? No rookie should be able to cloak that well, or snipe from that insane distance. Boom, another hit lands. She scoffs, thinking, "Amateurs. You need to be at least mid-tier to even grasp the concept of mana. And a level 7 like her, she's basically a walking deity, a world shaper. It makes her blood boil. That some scrub is tricking a level 7 mage." Oscar, battered and bruised, snaps at the traitor. "Focus on me. I'm the threat here." Kaya blinks, genuinely shocked. He's still vertical after that last hit. Then, she charges a nuke in her palm, warning Killian to watch her footsteps. "Actually, don't bother following." She unleashes hell on Oscar. The impact is so heavy he coughs up blood, crushed by the weight of her power. With Oscar floored, she pivots, locking onto the shot's origin vector. "Found you, level 3 brat." She blurs into a sprint toward him. Another shot rings out from the distance. "Should have ran, kid. Big mistake." Cut to Killian. He's praying the cavalry wakes up and does something, but he knows she's closing the gap fast. He's annoyed the royal family is moving at a snail's pace. Useless. But hey, at least Kaya and Oscar are split up, giving him a narrow window to work. Suddenly flashbang. A burst of light blindsides him. He spins around, stunned by the glare. And just like that, Kaya is in his face. Calculated perfectly. He freezes. She cleared that distance in one jump. She explains the glitch. She realized he was perfectly spoofing the mana code of the trees around him. With a smirk, she says hello to the level 3 trickster who played her. She hovers right in front of him. Don't I know you? He nods. We exchanged looks. Across the street, she remembers the stare down. He asks what her game is, but she shrugs. You already know why I'm here. Grinning, she warns him, she's not folding. She's got personal stakes in this election. Killian frowns. Why play sidekick to a clown like Mark Sweet that catches her off guard? She cackles in his face. Sidekick, please. I'm a tattooer. We aren't in the same league. Killian looks blank, asking what the hell a tattooer is. She gasps. You know the Purple Brigade, but not us, really. Killian flashes back to Oscar's intel about the brigade's powerful backers. Suddenly, Oscar crashes onto the scene. You good. Kaya blinks at his speed. Oscar grimaces. She's a total monster, but we have to fight. Killian nods, honoring their pact. Buy me 10 seconds. Kaya cuts in, rolling her eyes. Done whispering sweet nothings, Oscar sweats. 10 seconds is an eternity against her, but I'll make it happen. He locks in, shifting into a full combat stance. Head-on collision imminent. She mocks them for the pause. Killian fires back. Just basic manners when dealing with kids. Kaya smirks. Show me what you got then. Killian zones in, knowing 10 seconds is barely enough, but his partner is a forest warrior. Oscar roars his name. Boom. Oscar explodes with a massive red aura, flipping the switch to serious mode. Kaya raises an eyebrow, activating the tattoo. Bold move. Power surges through Oscar's veins, his tattoo glowing neon as he vents raw energy. He screams that this is his absolute limit. Kaya doesn't flinch. Come on then, warrior. She flares her own crimson aura and drops into a stance. They collide. A vortex of pure energy rips the air, pulverizing everything in the blast radius. The impact triggers a massive explosion, kicking up a wall of dust. Through the smog, she catches his fist. She blocks it, but she feels that pressure. But she's got him trapped in a magic circle. Now it's a party, she laughs. Break your limits. Oscar screams in agony, pushing past the pain threshold. With a deafening roar, he pours everything into shattering her barrier. Kaya's eyes go wide. Did he just... Oscar goes limp, lights out, but his body stays standing. Burned out his mana core, she notes. She sighs, annoyed. Even if they're estranged, he's still blood. She turns her back on the fallen warrior. All right, genius. You're up. She scans the perimeter, zero visual. Where did the kid go? Then boom, she spots Killian standing right in the eye of his own spell. Realization hits her like a truck. He casts the solitary garden. A high-pitched screech pierces the air, and her arrogant smirk instantly vanishes. She's totally blindsided. Before she can react, a luminous dome snaps shut, sealing the warrior inside a cage of pure light. She racks her brain what trash tier level 3 spell could possibly hold her. Then the horror sets in. She gets it. It's a vacuum. No air, no mana. A total death trap. Honestly, she's low-key impressed by the elegance of the technique. Now she's dying to see his final form. She grins, taunting him. You feel that drag, don't you? Your tank is running on empty. She mocks his effort. Cute trick, genius. But with your current stats, you can't hold me. The power gap is just too massive. Stop gripping onto that delusion, she snaps. I'm ending this little game. Right now. Inside the dome, Kaya panics. Why are her tattoos dead? Meanwhile, Killian knows a standard level 7 mage would be toast by now. But he's got the cheat codes. As the former master of the White Tower, he knows every dirty secret of the Forest Warriors. That's top secret intel exclusively for Tower Masters. We're talking ancient forbidden knowledge here. Their magic breathes through their skin. Suffocate the skin, you kill the magic. Killian sighs with relief. Thank God he did his homework. But here's the twist. Their real lethality is physical martial arts. Kaya's grin turns feral. Okay, things just got spicy. This is getting dangerous, she screams, launching herself at him with glitch-like speed. Killian's only play restrict her motion. Time for the ace up his sleeve. He triggers the Oscar style, unleashing the sound of waves technique. A massive tsunami, visual, floods Kaya's vision. She hesitates. Is this an illusion? Her magic is offline, so how is he doing this? If that wave connects, it's game over. At the absolute final microsecond, she snaps her body sideways, dodging by a hair. Twist. A golden barrier erupts out of nowhere, stonewalling the attack. The illusion shatters into mist. Irritated, Killian grits his teeth and slams a heavy hit into her. He didn't need to win, he just needed to pin her down for a split second. But Kaya just cackles in his face. Gotcha. She flashes a winner's smile. You were fighting a ghost, kid. Even she's shook that she slipped that punch. Was she stalling for kicks? Or did she actually sense a lethal threat there? Who are you really? She's hooked. Even the masters don't give her this much adrenaline. Logic says kill him now, but she wants to see him ripen. You're a fun toy, the villainess sneers. Killian stands there, gasping, too drained to clap back. 0 mana left. He curses himself for not going all out sooner. But hey, the mission wasn't to win, it was to buy time. And then boom, a colossal black greatsword slams into the earth from the heavens. Kaya freezes, staring at the obelisk of steel. A silhouette drops from the clouds framed perfectly by the full moon. Cinematic entrance 10 out of 10. Crash. He hits the deck, sending a shockwave ripping through the dirt. Enter Walker, the Empire's national security superintendent. Killian wheezes out one final intel drop for the backup target, Kaya, Rockwood. Walker flashes the warrant. You are under arrest for homicide and arson. Come quietly. Kaya clocks him immediately, the Emperor's black sword. Heavy hitter. Killian can't believe the Royals sent a level 7 tank to save his bacon. But seeing the army swarm in Kaya rolls her eyes. The vibe just died. Total buzzkill. The whole Empire is here. Pass. She decides it's not worth the sweat, throwing her hands up. I surrender. Walker narrows his eyes. You aren't going anywhere. She brags about knowing when to fold, completely ignoring his threat. She smirks, dropping a final threat. I won't forget this slight. Catch you later. Poof. She dissolves into a violent gust of wind and is gone. A soldier panics. Sir Dewey chase. Don't bother, Walker grunts. She's pro tier. He pivots, barking orders to lock down the siege. He walks over to where Killian collapsed. Kid, what were you thinking diving in like that? Then he sees it, the kid is out cold. Mana depletion. Walker rests a heavy hand on his shoulder. You did good, kid. You held the line. Cut to black. Killian snaps awake in a pristine sunlit garden. He checks his gem. Mind reeling. Was the battle a nightmare? A voice cuts in, Whatcha? Looking at Radon. Just the family photo, he replies, flashing the picture. His buddy laughs. Look at little Kaya. She's bawling her eyes out. Why the mask, though? His friend teases. Radon straightens up. A man has to keep his dignity. Nah, you're just too pretty underneath. The guy cracks. Wanted to look tough, huh? Anyway, congrats on baby number 2. You should join the tower, the friend urges. Radon shrugs. I don't care if my kids sling spells or not. He drops some wisdom on his stunned friend. Dreams are personal. My kids, they'll figure out what justice means on their own. With a knowing smirk, the man nods, vibing with the wisdom dropped by his old pal Radon. Still, he doesn't hold back, asking Radon to ship the kids off to the tower. Radon gives a non-committal, I'll think on it. Suddenly, the scene snaps back to reality, and Killian's eyes fly open. Just a dream. He bolts upright in bed, muttering an apology to Radon. When a weird crunching sound cuts through the silence, he whips around to find Oscar casually peeling an apple in the corner. Yo, what are you doing here? Oscar looks shook by the question. Peeling a snack. Killian raises an eyebrow. Do you literally have to do that right in my face? Oscar shrugs. Watching you suffer makes the fruit taste sweeter. Killian actually laughs, thanking him for the apple. Okay, gotta admit, that was delicious. How long was I out, he asks. Oscar groans. 3 long days. Killian realizes the same priestess must have patched him up, and Oscar assures him he's good to go. Then he drops the bomb. Elder Maxime absolutely grilled them while Killian was asleep, making Killian sigh in relief. Thank God he was in a coma for that lecture. Oscar flips the switch to serious mode. Heads up, there's a mage hunter lurking in the north. Killian freezes. Did anyone from our crew get hit? He knows level 5 mages are dropping like flies. Fortunately, they're clear for now. But Oscar warns him to stay sharp. Other towers have already been raided. This predator is in their territory, and he targets solo players. Strength in numbers is their only survival strat. Oscar then confirms. He's riding back to the White Tower with Killian, now that he's tracked down the traitor. Killian eyes him with worry, but Oscar flexes. Forest warriors heal fast, bro. But the concern wasn't just about physical wounds. It was the emotional weight of having thrown hands with his own family. Suddenly, Jake bursts through the bedroom door, shouting their names. The kid rushes in, looking incredibly relieved to see Oscar standing tall. Oscar gives him props for calling the medic in time. Then Jake shyly hands over a package he'd been saving for Killian's wake-up call. It was the payout for their services. Jake mumbles an apology that the stack isn't bigger, but Killian stops him. Hey, this is plenty. The boy bows full of gratitude. While Oscar quips that Mark should have been the one footing the bill, Jake grins, dropping a bombshell. His dream has shifted, and he's done with the politician path like his dad. Killian beams with pride. You'd make a sick mage if you tried, kid. But Jake shakes his head. He's joining national security. He wants to punish the wicked and protect the innocent. Once the kid bounces, Walker steps in, the vibe turning icy. It's over, he states. The trash has been taken out, including the mastermind Mark Sweet, who's currently putting up a fight. Walker stares him down cold. You're an executive for the Happy Ending cartel. He orders the guards to drag him away and plot twist his daughter is in chains too. Mark loses it, screaming Ara, as he watches the guards haul her off. He begs them to let her go, swearing on his life that the girl is totally innocent. But Ara snaps, furious, and screams right back, blaming her dad for this entire disaster. Mark stands there paralyzed, absolutely roasted by his own daughter's words. Back in the recovery room, Killian asks, "Did Ara Sweet get booked too?" Walker gives a grim nod. She's heading to the slammer for putting a bounty on their heads. Then Walker turns to Oscar, mentioning that Jake spilled the tea about the crystal ball. Killian stiffens sweat, forming how does he explain the secret code, but Walker just nods. That was a bold move. Killian exhales, heart pounding. Then Walker asks, "Is the master of the magic tower doing okay?" Killian blinks, totally confused, then stifles a laugh. Walker thinks the contact was with her. Perfect. Then Walker checks the time, announcing he's got a jet. "Take care of yourselves, gentlemen." Killian thanks him, watching the man turn toward the exit. But hand on the knob, Walker pauses. He looks back, hesitating like he's got one last thing to say. "Are all mages from the White Tower like you two?" Killian tilts his head. "What's that supposed to mean?" Walker just gives a cryptic, thoughtful look before brushing it off. "Rest up," he says, closing the door behind him. As he walks away, Walker muses. Every mage he's known was just chasing a paycheck. But these two from the White Tower, they're built different. It finally clicks why the White Tower was treated like holy ground by the older generation. A memory flashes before his eyes, and he starts to get it. Just a little piece of that heavy